Hearing the man's words that their closeness would continue even after marriage, the girl stopped dead in her tracks, unable to hide her shock. The vessel she was carefully holding in her hands suddenly slipped out, and with a loud crash, fell to the floor, breaking into many small pieces, filling the silence with a ringing echo. Another lady in a pink dress looked at Aston with concern and asked how she was feeling, knowing that the tea that was inside the broken teapot was very hot. Pressing her palm to her chest, the girl thoughtfully wondered if Lily had already met the main character, and now their destinies were intertwined into a single whole, as if in a beautiful destiny. Lately, people have increasingly begun to find themselves in various novels, as if they were becoming part of a story written in a magic book. And now this girl has become one of those who has fallen into it. According to the plot, the lady was not only Lily's best friend, but also the main antagonist of the story, hiding her true intentions behind the mask of friendship and insidiously weaving intrigues against the heroes. However, such villains only existed to elevate the main characters, such as the sweet girl with curly hair and an innocent smile, who embodied the purity and light in this world. Aston was an unloved child, and the head of the house often received complaints from servants who reported that this ungrateful girl unfairly offended her friend, thereby causing discontent and irritation in the house. The man slammed his fist on the table with anger and determination, producing a deafening crack that reflected the full force of his indignation and disappointment. The boy jumped up from his seat and rushed after the scoundrel, ready to do everything possible to find her and bring her to justice. The servants, worried about what was happening, followed him in a hurry. The blonde aristocrat stood at the door pronouncing Aston's name with particular care. The man's voice was filled with insistence and impatience. Opening the door with a bang and a loud slam, the nobleman, full of indignation, shouted that the little wretch had caused a lot of trouble again, causing many disappointed sighs and angry looks from those around him. At this point, Aston offered her stepsister to try on the new dress, but she hesitated when she noticed her father standing there with a look of surprise and displeasure. Having calmed his anger when the man realized that his own daughter was inside, he sternly ordered the little one to sit as quietly as possible, like water under grass, and not to attract unnecessary attention to herself. Before leaving, the aristocrat uttered caustic words that filled the space with indignation, not hiding his displeasure at how he could have such an unfit child. Lily, full of worry and anxiety, turned to her friend with a sincere question about how she was feeling and whether everything was okay, trying to show all her care and support. Tears began to flow from the main character's eyes, and a lump of grief and self-flagellation was sown in her heart. She began to blame herself for everything that had happened, feeling guilty for every mistake and failure. The lady with the dark, mocking face, twisted into a sinister grin, called the noble Lady Aston Seymour, distant, demonstrating her disdain and mockery. Before meeting Lily, the little girl's life was filled with constant rumors and ridicule from other aristocrats who considered her arrogant and haughty, not missing an opportunity to humiliate and defame her reputation. Covering her ears with her hands, the girl tried to escape her bad reputation, as if trying to drown out the condemning words that haunted her and ruined her life. The lady stood all alone, surrounded by silence, as if the whole world had disappeared, leaving the little girl alone among her own thoughts and memories. On the horizon appeared Lily, a girl whom a strict father brought into the house to keep his own daughter company and bring a little joy and fresh emotions. The friend quickly overcame all the obstacles and barriers set up by the noblewoman, and finally hugged her, freeing her from all invisible barriers and tensions, creating a feeling of warmth and support. A new friend literally saved Aston by spending time with her, creating exquisite flower crowns and helping her find comfort and joy in simple yet magical moments. However, all good things come to an end sooner or later, and now 5 years have passed since the girl's arrival. An exquisite crown inlaid with precious stones was placed on the girl's head, emphasizing status and elegance. The Imperial family once again found their lost daughter, who turned out to be Lily, whose return was not only a great joy for her family, but also a significant event for the entire Imperial court. Helping Aston wipe her dress with a handkerchief, the lady knelt beside her. They were now 20 years old, and the time had come when they were to begin choosing their husbands. The beauty could not utter a word, fearing that a casual remark could destroy the fragile and important relationship of the main characters of the novel, which was too important to be put at risk. Overwhelmed by fear of herself, Aston felt her own hands, as if alive, frantically reaching out to her, as if trying to grab her and drag her into the thick darkness from which it seemed impossible to escape. Her fingers tightened on the fabric of her dress. The girl didn't want to hurt her best friend, trying to keep herself from doing anything that could affect their relationship. Noticing the tension on Aston's face, the aristocrat Lily approached her and asked what happened, showing genuine concern and a desire to understand the situation. Wanting to remain true to their friendship and not cause unnecessary worries, the beauty said that everything was fine, trying to hide her true feelings behind a mask of calm. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a young man who looked like a prince from a fairy tale. He gracefully extended his hand, inviting them to dance. And it was the main character, Lisian Ortez. Hands in exquisite gloves, smoothly and gracefully joined, creating an impression of harmony and refined elegance, like a dance of two souls that found each other. Loudly laughing and beaming with genuine happiness, the lady began to dance with ease and grace, and joyful laughter, like music, spread around, filling the space with warmth and light. The ideal couple of lovers discussed something important, enjoying every moment of closeness and comfort, which created a special bond of understanding and warmth between them. Hands were clenched tightly into fists, as she tried her best not to let her emotions get the better of her and ruin Lily with her overwhelming excitement. Therefore, the girl could only stand with an indifferent face in the crowd, watching the dance of a couple who attracted the attention of all high society with their charm and grace. Aston was confident that Lily had not only a wonderful future ahead of her, full of bright prospects and dreams come true, but also a happy ending filled with joy and satisfaction. The found princess will be happy, despite the absence of her old friend, because she will have a new fiancé and prospects for a bright future. The girl turned around and left the room. Her intentions were decisive and firm. She was determined to finally wake up from this long and tiring sleep that dragged on endlessly. Night had fallen, and the mansion, shrouded in a mysterious peace, was illuminated by the soft light of the stars, which sparkled in the sky like precious stones. The lady, concentrating her attention, sat at the table slowly and carefully, sorting through the documents, each of which required her deep analysis and understanding. Immersed in the world of important papers and tasks, suddenly, her graceful fingers stopped on a particularly beautiful piece of paper, which sparkled magically in the light, decorated with delicate designs of roses, attracting special attention. This piece was somewhat reminiscent of Lily, which had the same bright and expressive personality, as if each element of the paper reflected its unique essence. Slowly, with exquisite grace, the aristocrat began to write a letter to her friend, in which she said that if she was reading these lines, then Aston had already left her home and set off on a long journey. Having entered the world of the novel when she was only 10 years old, the noblewoman hoped that, as in other novels, she would be able to find the love of family and friends, find her place in this new world, and be surrounded by care. She dreamed of finding a lover, as happens with the heroines of stories, hoping for romantic happiness and exciting events that usually accompany the main characters on their journey. But every time the lady tried to meet someone, or just chat, the same thing happened. All attempts invariably ended in failure, as if fate was playing with her. People shrank away from her as if they were afraid of something unknown, and often called her an ominous child, leaving behind only fear and misunderstanding. They mocked the little girl mercilessly, and then, as if out of habit, shifted all the blame onto her, as if her very existence served as an excuse for their cruelty and injustice, making her a target for mindless malice and indifference. Father mercilessly punished for every little thing, insisting that it was a disgrace to the family, as if all the family's failures and problems lay only on fragile shoulders, which made the anger even more unbearable. All excuses were invariably interrupted by a sharp and loud tap of his cane, as if this sound were the final sentence, depriving the lady of the opportunity to be heard. The man sternly ordered his daughter to be as quiet as a mouse, emphasizing each syllable with cold determination. In his eyes, she was nothing but a shameful blemish on their family. Aston lost all her ardor. Her eyes dimmed with fear, for the thought that she might be sent into exile again fettered her heart and deprived her of the strength to resist. Lily intervened in the conversation, hugging her friend and confidently voicing her opinion, showing the rare courage and determination needed to stand up to the powerful head of the family, demonstrating her resilience and independence. The noblewoman loudly declared that Aston was innocent, while the other nobles insisted that they were right, and shifted the blame onto the defenseless girl. Bitter tears flowed down the cheeks of the rich man's own daughter, symbolizing the deep despair and sadness caused by the difficult test she faced at this difficult moment. Smiling as she sat at the table, Aston reflected on how her life would not have been as fulfilling without the support and presence of her noble friend, who was her support and source of strength. With the pen in her fingers, the lady realized that she needed to let go of her friend, clearing her path and allowing her to go her own way so that they could both move on, each on their own path. On paper, the beauty wrote that an outcast like her should not be near the princess, since their paths were too different, and she did not deserve such closeness. Aston finally found a way to escape from this novel, and was determined to try it, to change her destiny and free herself from the limitations of the fictional world. The final touch in writing the letter was perfume, which with a delicate aroma gave the message a special elegance and individuality. The message was carefully placed on a tray, which the servant was to hand over in order to deliver it to the addressee with due respect and attention. Opening the creaking doors, the lady stepped into a dark room, devoid of even a hint of light, where a thick silence enveloped the space, and unclear outlines dissolved into the darkness. With the intention of returning home soon, the aristocrat sat down carefully next to the bed, internally trembling with excitement and the hope that the maids had not discovered the secret she had hidden, which the little girl had tried so hard to hide. Soon the woman's hand came across the handle of the suitcase, and the lady felt a slight relief, knowing that the important thing was now under control and ready for immediate use. Much time passed, and the aristocrat suffered from constant loneliness, ridicule, and bullying, which left deep wounds in her fragile heart and dragged her life into dark and painful experiences. Suddenly, a voice was heard calling out to its mistress, and this unexpected intervention made the girl tense up. Her heart beat faster, and her thoughts filled with anxiety. It was an adult maid who acted as a caring nanny, who always calmed her charge with her warm and kind smile, gently placing her hand on her shoulder as if protecting her from all troubles. Trying to cheer Aston up, the woman gently took her hand and, leading her away from the other ladies, said with joy on her face that she had prepared delicious tea especially for her. As the nanny carefully combed her hair, the girl turned around in surprise, hearing unexpected words. She was going to make her mistress free, and this revelation struck her to the depths of her soul. The servants sincerely wanted to help the lady escape from the cruel and gloomy mansion. And then one night, the silence was broken by an unexpected knock on the door, foreshadowing something important and inevitable. The sleepy aristocrat slowly emerged from her chambers, rubbing her closed eyes with her hand, as if trying to drive away the remnants of the drowsiness that still enveloped her mind. Outside the door, full of determination and anxiety, stood the maid, whose face reflected deep determination. Quietly, and with redoubled insistence, she suggested to her mistress that they take advantage of the night when everyone in the mansion was asleep to escape. The woman had a packed suitcase in her hands, ready to escape. However, the girl protested, awkwardly frightened by the thought that it was too dangerous because her father and brothers might chase after them. With a mocking tone, the maid said that it was better to take a risk and run away than to live out the rest of her days in this house perishing from melancholy and sadness. The girl knew that the nanny was right, and realizing that no one in this house truly loved her, she decided to agree to the offer, seeing no other way to freedom. The servant politely but insistently asked the lady to pack her things, emphasizing that they planned to set off tomorrow night. There was very little time left, and every minute mattered. The girl's eyes flashed with memories of the failed escape that had once turned into a failure. Now, having thought it over carefully and realized everything, she had a clear intention to put her plan into action. That day, their plan finally failed. The only window that shone from that gloomy house was like the last bright reminder that their escape attempt had ended in failure. Everyone blamed the nanny alone for the failed escape, claiming that the woman was blinded by the money that could be obtained for selling the daughter of aristocrats. The girl could only watch helplessly, as the only person who had shown her care and support was roughly pulled by the hands towards the exit, by the servants, leaving the little girl completely alone and hopeless. To the cruel father, this was just a pitiful spectacle, not worth his attention. He perceived the situation as a minor setback not worth his time and effort. Later that day, little Aston sat alone in a chair, unsure of what to do next. Time dragged on endlessly, and her exile, which was scheduled for 2 years, began from that moment. Just touching the suitcase sent the little girl into a dark memory, bringing back a flood of painful images and emotions she had tried to forget. The gems could be worth a lot of money, so it was decided to take with them a pearl bracelet and a comb, which could bring some value in a difficult situation. Holding the jewelry in her hands, the lady thought about what she should take with her to ensure some financial security for herself in the future. Looking around and noticing that the suitcase was too empty, she realized that she had not taken enough things with her that could be useful in their difficult situation. Suddenly, she was joined by another person who entered without knocking, with a wide smile on his face. The unexpected appearance only increased her feeling of uncertainty and anxiety, adding even more tension. It was a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He asked mockingly why the noble woman was still awake, clearly surprised that her night's rest had been disturbed. It was Claude Seymour standing on the balcony, a man of a harsh and unmannered disposition who considered it unnecessary to knock on a lady's door. The nobleman asked rudely, and with a hint of contempt, why Aston was staring at him, as if the noblewoman did not consider him worthy of even the slightest answer. The words were full of arrogance, and there was a sense of resentment in them. Without thinking twice, the lady quickly hid the suitcase behind her back, trying to hide its contents and avoid unnecessary attention. Claude began to approach his companion mockingly, noting that she had become too boring and predictable. He remembered how in childhood, Aston, upon seeing him, turned pale and ran away in panic, in contrast to the current calm which irritated him. Approaching the girl's hair, the man, with an expression of mocking interest on his face, asked if she was afraid of him now. Words full of irony and cold-blooded malice aimed to arouse fear in the girl. After this, the nobleman noticed that Aston was dressed in a pauper's dress and was standing on the balcony at night, which seemed extremely strange and unacceptable for her situation. With a contemptuous grin, he asked the lady if the aristocrat was really planning to run away, judging by her unusual behavior and low-class clothing, which only increased the disdain. Unwilling to tolerate the little girl's stubbornness any longer, Claude grabbed Aston by the hair and, roughly pulling her to the side, called her stupid, demonstrating his displeasure and contempt for her unsuccessful attempts to escape. Without her last name, the lady seemed empty, a nobody and a nothing, having lost all the significance and identity that her family gave her. The girl stepped back, holding her head tightly, as if trying to cope with the growing flow of emotions and the overwhelming fear that had completely taken over her. The man, without any embarrassment, robbed his interlocutor of her suitcase and, carefully examining it, asked what kind of thing it was and what significance it had, as if trying to reveal its true value and purpose. The suitcase's lock came open, and jewels poured out of the old bag, sparkling in the dim light, which only increased the feeling of helplessness and excitement. With longing and deep sadness, Aston could only helplessly watch as the man, without showing any respect, mercilessly destroyed all the jewelry. The aristocrat's hands, tightly clutching the hem of her dress, seemed to seek comfort and fortitude in this simple gesture when her fragile world was collapsing right before her eyes, evoking a feeling of deep internal struggle and despair. Waving goodbye, Claude ordered Aston to stop her dreams of escape, convincing her that she had no chance of surviving outside the walls of her home, and that all attempts to escape were in vain. Sadly, the lady knelt down next to the broken jewels, as if trying to find solace and peace among the wreckage of her hopes and dreams. She continued to sit without moving until the door behind which the unexpected guest was hiding closed with a dull sound. In the silence, filled with heavy thoughts and bitterness from what she had experienced, the noblewoman remained immersed in her thoughts. As Aston gathered the remaining stones, she realized that she could once again gather the ingredients for her escape. The hope of freedom once again filled her thoughts, despite everything that had happened. With a determined step, the aristocrat headed towards the railing, full of determination, as if ready to do everything necessary to achieve her goal, despite all obstacles. Without a moment's delay, the noble lady jumped from the balcony with grace and determination, spreading her arms like wings, and rushed into a breathtaking and rapid flight into the endless and blue skies. In the dim candlelight, a woman's hand, gracefully curved and delicate, carefully held the letter, as if it were the most precious treasure, creating an atmosphere of intimate mystery with its warmth and light. It was Lily holding in her hands a letter from her runaway friend, reading lines filled with remorse and regret under the dim light of a candle. Quick footsteps sounded in the silence of the night, with a loud and sharp thud from hitting the cold floor, as if someone was rushing in a panic, leaving no moment for reflection or regret. It was Aston who stood by the carriage with the driver, saying that they should head to the Tower of the Magicians of Britannia, emphasizing the importance of this journey to the fulfillment of their task. White birds, gracefully fluttering in the air, soared freely above the transport, as if symbolizing peace and tranquility. Their smooth and graceful movements were in sharp contrast to the hectic traffic and bustle below them. Long ago, Aston discussed with Lily whether her friend could keep secrets, wondering about the trust and secrets that might be hidden in their relationship. Then the lady, with a light and graceful wave of her hand, concentrating all her magical concentration on one specific place, created from the air an elegant bird, which she decided to call Asila. Aston explained that the bird was a familiar and quickly closed her friend's mouth, ordering her not to make a sound so as not to reveal her secret that she was a sorceress. The girl put her finger to her lips elegantly, giving a sign of silence, which immediately made Lily feel embarrassed. The beauty awkwardly rubbed the back of her head, believing that such behavior was inappropriate, and apologized with sincere regret. Heading towards the tower in a luxurious carriage, the aristocrat doubted that anyone would be able to guess her true direction and the purpose of her journey. There was a man on the street, selling fresh baked goods, attracting passers-by with the aroma of hot buns and bread, and offering to enjoy delicious and freshly baked products. Another commoner carried a basket full of fresh herbs that had been carefully picked and were fragrant, bringing into the air the scent of greenery and the natural riches of the earth. Watching ordinary people, the aristocrat began to wonder if she was truly happy living the life they did, and wondered if she had missed something important while living in her privileged world. However, if this were the case, the little girl would never have met Lily. Suddenly, from the girl's hands, as if by a magical miracle, a light flowed, which gradually transformed into a bright and mysterious seal. The hand passing through the magic shield pulled out a book from it, shrouded in a mysterious glow, as if it itself was part of a magical and mysterious world, hidden from prying eyes. Aston began keeping this diary in her own hands when she was 13 years old, filling it with thoughts and events that gradually turned into a chronicle of her life. One of the entries in the diary was particularly old, made at the first meeting with the beautiful Lily, when the owner of the book herself was trembling with great fear. Then tears flowed down the cheeks of the aristocrat, and sitting on the cold floor, she was seized with horror at the thought that the main character could take her place, while she herself would remain in this gloomy and hopeless situation, risking death. Therefore, the beauty decided not to spoil the relationship with Lily, as it was in the original, and instead of hatred and anger, she shook with fear and horror, feeling how the world around her was collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. However, the charming lady with pink hair, who at first glance seemed fragile and gentle, turned out to be a truly kind and warm-hearted person, captivating with her warmth of soul. At the right moment, the main character extended a hand to her half-sister, offering not only help, but also sincere support, as if building a bridge between their difficult relationship, thereby opening the way to understanding and reconciliation. Closing her eyes and holding a book in her palms, Aston recalled with quiet sadness those old times when life seemed easier and the world around her was filled with carelessness and warmth. The aristocrat even admitted to Lily that she had never been a real Aston. But suddenly, her thoughts were interrupted by a voice softly calling the lady to appear from the carriage. In his fingers was a strange object reminiscent of resin, inside of which a small plant seemed to have frozen, as if time had stopped sealing the tree in a transparent prison. The guard politely asked the lady to show the relic so that she could confirm its authenticity and demonstrate where exactly the woman came from which corner of the great country of the empire. Having cast a suspicious glance at the young lady, the guard nevertheless gave his consent to continue on his way, clearly wary of the stranger's intentions and appearance. The carriage with the driver slowly drove along the forest path, where magical crystals, shimmering in the rays of sunlight, hovered in the air, creating a magical atmosphere and enveloping the surrounding landscape with a mysterious glow. Aston opened the window, unable to contain her interest, and carefully watched the stones that had been installed by the magicians. These stones emitted a mysterious glow and shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. Opening her mouth, the lady held the small object towards him, her gaze focused and her voice firm and commanding her familiar to come and do her bidding. A white feathered bird emerged from the clouds, its majestic and graceful appearance reminiscent of the magical moment when the heavens reveal their secrets. When Asilla sat on her mistress's shoulder, the aristocrat ordered her pet to wait a moment, after which, concentrating her magical power, she conjured a napkin that materialized in the air. Wiping the sweat from her forehead, the girl muttered that the luck spell was taking too long, her voice full of fatigue and irritation from the long effort. Turning to her assistant, Aston asked him to deliver the item to Lisian, emphasizing the importance of the assignment and hoping for its quick and accurate delivery. During the ball, when all the high society was happily enjoying the holiday, the lady could not hold back her tears and, overcome with grief, hastily left the hall to hide from everyone and find solitude. But suddenly someone disturbed her peace, and a hand fell on her fragile female shoulder, causing her to tremble and turn towards the intruder, feeling alarm and an unexpected intrusion. At the very moment when the whole scene was filled with an atmosphere of tense anticipation, Lisian, a charming character in the novel, with thick dark hair and an indescribable charm, came to the fore. The gentleman offered his lovely companion an exquisite white handkerchief so that she could gently wipe away the tears that had gathered in her large eyes and restore to herself a sense of comfort and consolation. The lady sent her pet to the prince with a request to return not only the kindness shown, but also the exquisite handkerchief that was so important to him, in order to preserve this gesture of respect and gratitude. Looking out the window, the noblewoman realized that a simple luck spell and the help of her familiar were not enough for her. She was eager to learn more and sought to master the art of manipulating space and time to expand her possibilities. In her palms rested a cup of aromatic drink in which flower petals floated, adding to the drink not only an exquisite taste, but also a special beauty. With surprise, the handsome man with long hair said that apparently a guest was supposed to arrive today, adding that this event unexpectedly and intriguingly changed the usual course of the day. Lily, sitting in a chair, addressed the prince with concern in her voice, informing him that her best friend had gone missing, and expressed her deep concern over such a disappearance. The man approached in surprise and asked when and where Aston had last been seen, trying to gather information about her whereabouts and what could have led to the lady's disappearance. Upset, Lily detailed that the sweet lady was last seen at her mansion, where she was having a heart-to-heart talk with her brother, discussing something important and personal. The noblewoman herself did not believe the words of her best friend's family, realizing that it was a mistake to leave Aston with such cruel people. The beauty felt deep guilt for not taking sufficient precautions. It would be easier for her if she could throw off the heavy crown and be just the daughter of a simple aristocrat, free from all the responsibilities and expectations that her current status imposes. The missing noblewoman acted with cunning, leaving behind a mysterious letter. She disappeared from the city so suddenly that it seemed as if she had dissolved into thin air, leaving behind only questions and a mystery. Looking down, and with a look of deep, confused confusion on her face, Lily realized that it would be impossible to break this oath, as if the very thought of breaking this sacred oath seemed incomprehensible. The guy sitting over a cup of tea and watching his interlocutor saw for the first time how the beautiful princess loses her composure and blossoms before him in unexpected vulnerability. The noblewoman, who possessed an impeccable appearance and a charming character, remained unperturbed and inner calm until the name Aston Seymour became a subject of conversation. Even the emperor and empress were forbidden to pronounce the name Lily. Only a lady in a wreath and a long blue dress had the right to mention it, emphasizing the special respect and privileges associated with this name. Looking at his reflection in the cup with the aromatic drink, the young man began to realize why everyone at court felt jealousy and envy. His own reflection revealed the reasons for the hidden discontent of those around him. Suddenly, Lily, with a slight smile, noted that the aristocrat had always been distinguished by his nobility and devotion. So it was he who could be entrusted with an important matter, the search for the fugitive. The man asked in bewilderment if this was an order, to which she only laughed in response, as if the loud words seemed funny to her and did not at all require a serious and immediate answer. At that unforgettable and wonderful ball, when music filled the hall, the young man, leaning towards his lovely companion with quiet caution, told her about the request of their old mutual friend, closed his eyes, and calmly said that even without a direct order from the royal person, he had already begun searching for Aston, following his inner duty and his own convictions. The joyful lady reminded him of the promise he had made earlier, with a slight smile on her lips, as if wishing him not only to remember his words, but also to fulfill them in full. The nobleman rose slowly from his chair, casting a farewell glance at Lily, and bowing politely said goodbye to her, expressing his gratitude for the pleasant conversation. Her manner was so expressive and refined that it strongly resembled Aston's style, as if it echoed the features and subtleties inherent in the character of another aristocrat. The man walked quickly and with a determined step towards the carriage that was waiting for him on the street among the green gardens, eager to finish his business and return to his usual concerns. The tired Lisian, exhausted from fatigue, sank down on the soft seat of the carriage, hoping that this short time of rest would allow him to take a nap and regain his strength a little before the next trials. The night sky was illuminated by the bright light of the moon, whose soft rays gently dispelled the darkness, giving the surrounding world an enchanting and mystical glow, as if every corner was shrouded in an invisible veil of magic. The guy woke up only when night fell, slowly opening his eyes and blinking from the diffused light that penetrated the transport and helped him return to reality. Suddenly, a bird appeared at the carriage window, holding an important message in its claw, bringing with it some mysterious news and breaking the silence of the night journey. The bird had the prince's scarf tied around its leg, thin and elegant, with an exquisite pattern that gave the feathered messenger a special status and symbolized the importance of the message it was conveying. With a happy smile, the man realized that this was news from the missing Aston, and his face lit up with joy from the hope of her return or new news. The aristocrat, expressing gratitude, called the messenger a fine fellow, noting his loyalty and selflessness. Unfortunately, he had nothing to offer in return for such valuable help. As soon as the guy took his thing, the pet immediately soared back into the sky, as if not wanting to waste a minute and striving to return to its air element. The nobleman's fingers tightly gripped the fabric, wanting to capture every curve of it, giving special importance and careful attention to this item. That day, Lisian, without hesitation, gave his thing to the crying girl, showing kindness and compassion, despite his own feelings and circumstances. The guy couldn't get rid of thoughts about the beautiful Aston. Her image constantly hovered in his mind, preventing him from concentrating on everyday affairs and causing endless worries in his heart. Sitting in a chair, the lady hesitantly and stammeringly got to know the new person, trying to overcome her embarrassment and make a good impression despite her inner anxiety. Opposite sat a man with long hair and a serious look. His refined appearance and inscrutable expression gave him a mysterious and impressive appearance. He was the head of a line of wizards, a Morin, whose roots go back into the distant past. He was not only the Lord of the Dark Night, but also the master of the Tower of Magicians, ruling over the secrets and magic that had been kept in his domain for centuries. Moreover, the man was the second person to propose to Lily, opening up the prospect of a new life to her and expressing his sincere feelings and intentions. Even Amorin looked at his guest, carefully studying her with restraint and concentration, trying to understand her true intentions and character, carefully assessing every movement and facial expression. Bowing her head, Aston couldn't help but notice that the boy looked just as handsome as he did in the novel. The mage's handsomeness and refined appearance seemed like a living embodiment of the images she had read and imagined. Ivan mysteriously said that the lady was able to get into the tower only because he himself allowed her to do so, thereby emphasizing his power and control over the situation. It turned out that the aristocrat literally emanated the smell of magic, which enveloped her from all sides, like an invisible aura indicating a connection with mystical forces. Jumping up from her seat, Aston excitedly asked the wizard if it was possible that this was time magic, wanting to find out if what was happening was related to an ancient and powerful spell that could alter the flow of time. The sorcerer replied that it was unlikely to be time magic, since the magic of space and time had long since disappeared in the fire, leaving only ashes and forgotten legends about its powerful abilities. Taking a cup of tea in his hands, the man asked with interest what exactly brought the lady to him, trying to find out the reasons for the visit and the motives that prompted her to ask for a meeting. The lady replied that she had been using magic for a long time and seemed to have found the key to moving through time and dimensions, which opened up new horizons and opportunities for her in the world. The sorcerer was shocked and amazed to the core when the lady who expressed her desire to become a part of their magical society and stay in the tower gave such a passionate and inspiring speech. He folded his hands in front of him and wondered if he should trust this mysterious girl, whose intentions and motivations remained a mystery and uncertainty to him. Slowly and thoughtfully, Aston began to speculate that perhaps they could banish her, But at the same time, they realized that a woman's knowledge and skill in time-related magic was too valuable to simply let the noblewoman go. After this, the beauty added that she was aware of the ability of magicians to determine whether a person is telling the truth or lying using their eyes. The wizard who led the people with a scepter in his hand was the head of the Amoran family. He had the ability to calmly read the mana movements of other people. With trembling and fear in her eyes, the lady, unable to cope with the growing excitement, hugged her shoulders tightly, as if trying to find comfort and protection in her own arms. With a smile on his lips, the guy noted that everything was indeed like that, although he admitted that there were weak points in such magic. Aston's words slightly attracted the interlocutor's attention, causing him to show interest. With no other choice, the aristocrat decided to demonstrate her magic by creating an exquisite seal to demonstrate her abilities and advance her position. Surprised, Hyven jumped from his seat when the lady managed to use the magical artifacts of the ancient empire, demonstrating her outstanding abilities. Unable to contain his curiosity, the man extended his hand, intending to personally verify the authenticity of the seal, hoping that only a personal touch could give him a full idea of its true value. With a smile on her face, the lady with obvious pleasure compared the magician to a squirrel, which, having found a nut stubbornly and persistently, holds on to it, as if refusing to let go of its valuable find, despite all the attempts of those around to dissuade the beast. Apologizing for her sudden fit of laughter, Aston explained that she has the unique ability to send small objects into subspace where they can be kept out of reach. Hyven realized that this lady was a representative of an ancient and rare line of wizards who possessed the unique ability to control time, which made the beauty even more mysterious and valuable. In the fictional world of the novel, the distinguishing features of sorcerers are determined by what each individual specifically wishes to achieve, making their abilities unique and connected to their inner aspirations. People burning in fire could express their desire to become flame mages, and this desire merged with their destiny, turning them into wielders of fire magic. People drowning in water could express their desire to breathe underwater, and this desire would make them possessors of water magic, allowing them to exist in an aquatic environment. Thus, wizards found their powers when their aspirations and desires became part of their being, and they could touch the light with their own hands. So Aston proposed to her interlocutor to make a deal that would combine their aspirations and strengths, allowing them to jointly realize ambitious goals and achieve the desired result that they could not achieve alone. The first and fundamental rule of magic was the observance of equivalent exchange. Every action required an equivalent sacrifice in order to maintain the balance of power and harmony. Both mages would mark themselves with mana when they made the pact, and shook hands, symbolizing their mutual agreement and ensuring that the terms of the agreement would be followed. The man, with a slight smile on his face, listened attentively to the terms of the deal, in which the lady offered a guaranteed transfer of information about the forces of time and space in exchange for protection and the provision of tools for research. Rising from his seat, the sorcerer calmly explained that everyone was always glad to see a wizard with dimensional powers, because such knowledge and skills brought great benefit to everyone. Extending his hand, Hyven congratulated Aston on joining their mage tower with a slight smile, welcoming her as a full member of this ancient and powerful brotherhood. The girl sadly remembered her best friend Lily, desperately wanting to see her beautiful face at least once more before leaving this world forever. And also, Lisian, who was the first to come to Aston's aid in her most difficult and dangerous moment, showing not only his loyalty and care, but also true courage. The handshake took place, and the lady, with a grateful smile, thanked her interlocutor for his understanding and willingness to help in such an important matter for her. The two sorcerers walked slowly through the majestic halls of the tower, their steps echoing off the marble walls, and their conversation was filled with ancient secrets and magical discussions. The guy snapped his fingers, and sparkling sparks burst out of them, illuminating the space and surprising his companion, causing her eyes to widen in admiration. A glowing pillar appeared before them, rising upward, emitting a soft light and captivating them with its majestic and mystical presence. Listening to the admiring speeches addressed to him, Hyven explained that there was no staircase in the closed part of the room, and therefore the way there had to be found independently, relying on intuition and skills. Holding the man's hand, Aston accepted his help to climb the staircase of glowing steps that led upward to new heights and discoveries. Walking forward with her new acquaintance, the aristocrat suddenly remembered that Lisian was a distant relative of the Empress, which added another note of intrigue to their meeting. It should be noted that the profile of the magician was as magnificent as, and not inferior to, the profile of the prince, radiating inimitable elegance and magical grace that fascinated and captivated the gaze. Jadis, Lily's real mother and the current empress, had remarried and was blood related to the Amoran family, adding another layer of complex lineage to their history. The empress, like the rest of her family, had brown eyes, and her boundless kindness, despite her position of power, earned love and respect without overshadowing her natural beauty. One day, Aston, having decided to see Lily, cautiously looked out from behind the wall, trying not to attract unnecessary attention and keep her meeting secret in order to avoid possible suspicions and misunderstandings. And at that moment, a touching picture appeared on the stage. Mother and daughter, surrounded by servants, were chatting pleasantly, discussing various topics, and enjoying each other's company. As Aston squeezed the wall, she felt not only a deep sense of calm, but also a painful envy that, like a dark snake, slowly crawled out from the deepest corners of her soul. The worried magician, noticing the sudden pallor of his companion, immediately asked if everything was all right, and his voice reflected deep concern and sincere concern. It should be noted that the profile of the magician was no less magnificent than the profile of the prince, radiating an indescribable elegance and magical grace that fascinated and captivated the gaze, as if unknown magic was hidden in them. The sorcerer, stopping his way, and with a slight sigh of relief, solemnly announced that they had finally reached the long-awaited place, and this ended their tiring journey. A majestic scene appeared before them, the upper part of the abode of the magicians, where a huge and majestic tree towered, guarding this mysterious place. The plant resembled a genealogical tree of a noble family. Each of its branches and lines was decorated with names, as if woven into a complex pattern of history and ancestors. The maiden touched one of the names, and immediately it began to glow with a bright, dazzling light, as if coming to life under the gentle touch. The sign indicated the name of the magician who had escorted the guest to the upper floor. He was the elegant head of an ancient line of great sorcerers, whose name alone inspired respect and admiration. Suddenly, a stranger's hand gently but confidently fell on the aristocrat's exquisite shoulder, violating the boundaries of personal space and causing her heart to beat faster as anxious excitement squeezed her fragile heart in a strong vice. Extending his pen with a graceful gesture, Amoran reminded the lady that she should write her name on the ancient tree to leave her mark and capture the memory of her visit to this magical place. Unable to resist, Aston admitted that she never thought it could be so romantic, and she was pleasantly surprised by the unexpected display of feelings. It turned out that the name was associated with the owner, and therefore the tree also had an invisible thread connecting it to other wizards, creating a hidden network of magical connections. The noblewoman carefully chose the right place on the tree to leave her name. Carefully and with feeling, she brought the pen close to the bark, preparing to leave her mark and sign of presence on this ancient tree. Now the status of the Duke's daughter faded into the background, as the mages working in the tower were freed from their mundane status, immersed in the world of magic and focusing on their ancient knowledge. Also, sometimes sorcerers would marry each other to combine their knowledge and master new magical skills, expanding their abilities and influence in the magical community. There were also those who dedicated their entire lives to studying ancient papers under the dim light of candles, delving into forgotten knowledge and magical secrets. Aston decided to run away from home, especially with her marriage approaching, as ladies were often married off as soon as they turned 19, and she did not want to be one of them. Soon, a new name appeared on the tree bark, belonging to an aristocrat who left her mark on this ancient monument, giving it even more meaning and depth. A bright light with sparks appeared, and the plant, as if coming to life, accepted the new inscription left by the former noblewoman, giving its appearance even more magical shine. Any hopes the lady had of keeping her identity a secret were dashed when Amarin revealed that Aston was not real, thus exposing her hidden true self. After trying unsuccessfully to justify herself, the beauty eventually revealed the truth and admitted that she was only partly the Duke's daughter, thus revealing only part of her true identity. Looking into the mirror of her past, the little girl tried to remember her real name. But this activity seemed crazy and useless since her memory and consciousness were shrouded in fog and confusion. The girl tried to convince the mage that she was telling the truth and did not remember her past, and Hyven eventually believed her, accepting her words as sincere as he could determine truth from lies. At this time, the girl was thinking about whether to confess to the man like Lily that she was a traveler from another reality, and how much this revelation could change their relationship. Without thinking twice, the man, as the owner of the tower, decided to give his interlocutor a pseudonym, settling on the name Aston, in order to preserve her secret identity. The man gently grabbed the beauty by the cheek and decided to believe her, but soon expected to receive detailed explanations about the girl's strange past in order to learn more about his mysterious companion. Suddenly, a soft and magical light began to appear around them, gradually filling the space, creating a mesmerizing and mysterious atmosphere, permeated with magic and mystery. The lady suddenly felt a sense of calm in her soul, and blushing, Aston apologized for her improper behavior, realizing that such actions could have caused inconvenience. The hand smoothly reached out to the blue feather that had fallen to the floor, as if trying to capture the mysterious beauty and feel an invisible connection with magic. The guy walked up to the wall and, concentrating on taking a brush in his hands, began to write the name of the new tower's ward, trying to carefully draw each letter in order to create a perfectly even and beautiful text that would become a symbol of a new beginning. Now realizing that she was not the real daughter of the Duchess, the maiden was faced with the painful thought of where the real Aston could be, and what fate could await the little one in this complex and unpredictable world. Burning with excitement and interest, the sorcerer casually asked if the beauty had previously had a teacher from the Tower of Magicians, hoping that this could shed light on her mysterious origin. Apologizing for his inappropriate behavior, Hyven extended his hand and invited his interlocutor to look at a particular place that he thought might be of interest. It turned out that the girl was assigned to the Arhanaz school, which became an unexpected turn in a woman's life and opened up new opportunities and different challenges for her. The man explained that 20 years ago, the school was considered one of the best of its generation, attracting attention for its high educational standards and outstanding student achievements. Both the Empress and the Banner Mages studied there, but like a dead tree, this school could not withstand the harsh political struggle and disappeared, swallowed up by the storm of time. Aston asked with surprise what could have influenced her to send Lily to this old school, which seemed to be a long-forgotten and abandoned place. Hyven began to think that despite the fact that the baby did not have high skills in magic, the tree still decided to appoint the beauty as the heir of this religion. After this, the guy added that many magicians had previously sought to take possession of the legacy of Arcanaza, and he could not have imagined then that the choice would ultimately fall on the Duke's daughter, whose fate and origin led to such an unexpected turn of events. With a quick and confident gait, Amorn headed towards the laboratory, trying to lead his guest there. She, with difficulty coping with the pace of his steps, barely kept up with him, trying not to fall behind. Closing her eyes, Aston realized that the mage seemed to be reluctant to touch upon the old topic again, which had been going on for 20 years, and still left painful marks on her soul. The couple stopped at the massive wooden doors that led into one of the long corridors, where every step on the ancient stone slabs echoed with silence, creating an atmosphere of mystery and anticipation. The man explained that the laboratory was now completely at Aston's disposal, and she had every right to use the building at her own discretion, as she pleased, regardless of what plans or desires would be realized. Smiling happily, the beauty reached for the door handle, her movements light and graceful, as if she were preparing to open up new possibilities for herself. The boy remained standing outside, explaining that he could not enter someone else's room without the owner's prior permission, emphasizing the importance of respecting personal boundaries and following established rules. With a soft and friendly smile, Aston warmly invited the magician inside. The gesture was full of cordiality and a sincere desire to make his stay comfortable and enjoyable, creating an atmosphere of coziness and hospitality. However, when Hyven stood frozen in place, showing no reaction, the lady became wary and began to think that she might have upset the wizard in some way. The beauty hastened to explain that she had found it difficult to explore the laboratory on her own, and so she needed Amaran's help. It was an honor for him to accompany the young lady in this endeavor. Inside the room was quite spacious, with a large desk in the center and a soft and comfortable chair surrounding it. All of this created the atmosphere of an office where one could concentrate on studying or working in a comfortable environment. The lady covered her mouth with her hand, in admiration of the new house. Her eyes filled with delight, and her facial expression became a reflection of deep gratitude and surprise. As she continued to move around the room, she began to carefully examine every detail, noticing and appreciating the interior elements that gave the room a unique and sophisticated look. However, the girl's special attention was drawn to the empty wall, which, as if hiding something important, aroused in her a feeling of curiosity and a desire to unravel its secret. Suddenly, in place of the white emptiness, a breathtaking scene arose. Before my eyes, a picturesque landscape unfolded, with a clear blue sky strewn with soft clouds and a riot of green plants, creating an atmosphere of peace. Quickly realizing that this was an image of a clearing near the tower, the lady turned her attention to the desk, littered with office supplies, which immediately caught her interest. Running her hand over the table, she made sure that its surface was without a single speck of dust, absolutely clean and tidy, as if it had just been cleaned and prepared for an important event. While Aston was lost in her thoughts, Amorin was watching her closely, following her every move with invisible interest. The man explained that the capabilities of the laboratory were directly dependent on the amount of power of the owner. The more power the owner had, the broader and more powerful the functions and resources of the laboratory could be. Sitting at the table, the girl gracefully raised her hand and, with a slight excitement in her voice, asked if she had an innate talent for magic, seeking to know her true power and purpose. A sudden comparison of herself to a younger, more beautiful version of the powerful sorcerer arose in the lady's mind, as if she saw it as a reflection of her own hidden abilities. The man approached the woman, saying that he could help her learn a lot. However, to gain such power, one must encounter magic in one's environment for a long time. Seeing that the lady was upset, Hyven came closer to calm Aston down. He gently told her that she had wonderful abilities and should not doubt herself because she had a great future ahead of her. The beauty, looking away and not believing in her own strength, wondered if she really was so strong. Could this mean that someone was capable of loving her? The picture that suddenly appeared before his eyes was of the entire Aston family, each member showing sincere and deep love for the sweet girl. The frustrated sorceress began to think about how unhappy the real Seymour might have been without her magical abilities, and how her life might have been full of suffering and limitations unknown to her. When Hyven asked the little girl with a good-natured smile if she would like to become his apprentice and learn his art, The beauty, smiling, took his offer as a joke. After learning that it wasn't just a joke, Aston awkwardly folded her hands in front of her and admitted that she was not an experienced mage at all and had no connection to the master's school, which was very embarrassing. Barely holding back her tears, the noblewoman resolutely refused to give the young man false hopes, knowing full well that she would soon have to leave this world forever and did not want to create illusions about a future that would not exist. Ivan saw no reason why he could not accept such a talented student and was confident that such abilities could be a great asset to his educational process. Suddenly, as if by magic, a sheet of paper appeared out of the clear air, softly and smoothly, falling to the ground, as if it had materialized from an invisible void. Taking pen in hand, Ivan proposed a deal for an apprenticeship, hoping that this offer would be the beginning of a new and exciting phase in the life of a talented student. Before the man could put the first line on the paper, Aston interrupted him decisively, asking with concern if it was possible to include some of her own conditions in the terms of the deal. Feeling awkward, the maiden asked Ivan not to send her back to the house she had fled from, in case her relatives came for her, seeking to avoid returning to her former life. Instead of being outraged, the boy calmly stated that it was his duty as the master to protect the members of the tower. He suggested that they start calling each other by their first names, thereby creating a more trusting relationship. The rules of the deal written on the papers lying on the table were quite simple. Aston was obliged to share the results of her research with the sorcerer. By signing the contract, the lady also acknowledged the boy as her teacher. According to the contract, it was his duty as a master to protect her and provide the necessary equipment for scientific research. The girl placed her signature at the bottom of the document, completing the formalities and officially agreeing to the terms of an important document. The magician could cancel the deal if the student demanded a lot of money or presented danger. Suddenly, a bright light suddenly lit up everything around, and Aston had to cover his face with his hand to protect himself from the blinding glare. The paper, as if under the influence of magic, began to slowly become engulfed in a bright flame, and this fiery spectacle became a symbol of the fact that the treaty was finally officially concluded and came into full force, leaving only ashes. At that moment, the aristocrat realized that she was no longer Lady Seymour, but was now becoming a mage's apprentice, which meant a radical change in status and life. The father will undoubtedly be extremely disappointed and dissatisfied with this decision of his daughter, since it did not correspond to his expectations and ideas about the lady's future. Pressing her hand to her chest, the sorceress wondered why she had even thought of her home, not understanding what had brought about these thoughts at the moment. Now Aston was safe in the tower. Approaching his interlocutor from behind, the guide gently asked what exactly was the reason for her deep interest in the magic of time and space, trying to understand what attracted the girl so much to these complex and mysterious sciences. With a smile on her lips, Aston admitted that she needed to return to one special place that held a special place in her heart and to which she felt an irresistible attraction. In the silence of the night, illuminated only by the moonlight, stood the mansion shrouded in an atmosphere of mystery and grandeur, as if hiding its secrets under the cover of darkness. The three men stood frozen in front of the broken container, their eyes fixed on the debris, as if they were searching for an explanation for what had happened. The aristocrat Seymour jumped up from his seat and, screaming with excitement, ordered his subordinates to immediately find the stupid girl who had run away from home. The boys tried to convince their master that they had just learned that the lady seemed to have gone abroad. They insisted that this knowledge was meant to confirm their information. The butler stepped forward and suggested that the young lady was currently with the princess, as they often spent time together, which could explain her absence. Standing opposite the gentleman, the man declared that he would immediately send servants to the palace to ensure order and resolve any problems that required urgent intervention. Among the boys was Claude, who, after the disappearance of his sister, secretly visited her at night. But one day one of the servants revealed this fact and gave away the young master. Then Aston stood on the balcony, holding a suitcase in her hands and preparing to escape, her heart beating faster with excitement and anxiety. As the beauty was about to leave everything behind, the nobleman had no choice but to say nothing in response to his father's words, who claimed that the aristocrat had run away because of his bullying. Any attempt to justify himself would only confirm his grave guilt. However, the boy persistently asked his parent to listen to his version of events, hoping that the explanation would help clarify the situation and show that he was not so guilty. Smiling and spreading his arms out to the side, Claude said that after meeting Lily, Aston was often in the clouds, absorbed in her dreams. That's why the guy decided to help her come back to reality and land. Standing opposite his father, he confidently continued that the girl probably wanted to become the bride of the crown prince, which seemed completely absurd and incomprehensible to him, causing internal bewilderment. Looking away, the man quietly added that the lovely Aston was notorious in society, hoping that such cleverly chosen words would convince his father to believe it. Despite his inner doubts, another guy suddenly intervened in their conversation, saying that the lady did not want to marry the prince at all. He added that there was someone else important involved in the current situation. Such concerns angered Lily's father, and the man, filled with anger, asked his relative if he even realized what he was saying, believing that such accusations only made things worse. The guy explained that all this time Aston had only done what she had done, causing trouble because of her stupidity. But if the princess was to be believed, there were other noble ladies behind all these actions, which indicated a more complex intrigue. It turned out that other people who wanted to make fun of the Seymour family skillfully manipulated the situation, approaching them with flattery and deception in order to achieve their goals. But the girl would not have been able to cope with even such a simple task as dressing without outside help, since she needed support and assistance from the servants who worked in the mansion. Unlike his daughter, whom he tried to protect and pamper, the cruel man did not spare his own sons and raised them strictly, demanding high standards and strict discipline from them. Clutching his head, the father thought that perhaps he had been wrong to feel sorry for the little girl, and realized that he had wanted her to remain alive and well, given all the difficulties and consequences they had faced. Not wanting to dwell on the bad for long, the aristocrat loudly ordered that the disappearance of his own daughter be immediately announced in order to attract attention and begin the necessary search as soon as possible. The sons were surprised by this decision, since they had already sent guards to search for him and thought that Aston would not be difficult to find. The young boys did not understand why it was necessary to make such a loud announcement, but the aristocrat was adamant. If they failed to find her, he insisted on turning to Lisian for help, believing that his help might be necessary. Turning to the window, the nobleman ended the conversation by declaring that if the daughter was not found by the end of the day, his subordinates should turn to the brave knight who could not leave the beautiful maiden in trouble. A new day had dawned, and in the square people were going about their daily business, scurrying back and forth, discussing the news, and making purchases, bringing a lively atmosphere to the general morning traffic. Among them was Aston, who removed the hood of her disguise and took a deep breath, freeing her face from the concealing veil and enjoying the feeling of freedom that came with it. On one of the woman's fingers, a precious ring glittered, shimmering in the rays of the morning sun, and attracting attention with its exquisite design and sparkling stones. This magical and rare artifact was a gift from a teacher who accidentally discovered it in his laboratory and presented it as a symbol of deep respect and appreciation for the efforts of a diligent student. The lady carefully directed a stream of mana into the decoration, and soon magic began to shimmer around it, creating a mesmerizing magical glow and enhancing its magical properties to unprecedented heights. While looking at herself in the mirror with fascination, Aston noticed that her eyes had changed color, becoming deep black, which added an extraordinary mystery to her image. With a smile, the sorcerer said that the student should tell everyone that she belongs to the Amoran family, and then there will be no problems, assuring that such a statement will provide her with protection and support. Sitting near the fountain, the sorceress could not help but notice that the atmosphere in the square was tense. For some reason, even the street trading had ended earlier than usual. Aston, looking around, felt a vague premonition that something significant had happened around her. Behind her, the water shimmered softly, reflecting the light as if hinting at a hidden secret. Suddenly, wanderers appeared in the city, mixing with ordinary passers-by, attracting attention with their unusual appearance and behavior amidst the usual bustle of the city. The shield bore a coat of arms, which showed a rose surrounded by two crossed swords. This symbol clearly indicated that he belonged to the noble Seymour family, renowned for its military prowess. The girl, noticing strange changes in the environment and feeling growing uneasy, turned to the apple seller with a request to clarify whether something important or unusual had happened that could explain the anxiety and concern. The adult commoner explained that the knights in the city were looking for a noble lady with blonde hair and green eyes. Then, to dispel the anxiety, the woman offered the girl to try a juicy apple. Aston gratefully accepted half of the fruit, appreciating the friendly saleswoman's gesture and enjoying the sweet taste of the apple, which helped her relax a little. Trying to blend in with the ordinary peasant women, the lady suddenly realized that she was walking alone for the first time without an escort, and this thought surprised her, making her think about how unusual and unexpected today's walk had turned out. Usually, the maids accompanied their mistress, carefully holding the hem of her long dress so that it did not touch the ground, did not get dirty, and maintained its impeccable, elegant appearance worthy of the aristocracy. And the knights, walking ahead with honed attentiveness, cleared the way for the young mistress, protecting her from possible threats and creating an atmosphere of unshakable security around her in any situation. Realizing that she was getting close to the wanderers, Aston quickly pulled up her hood, trying to become invisible and blend in with her surroundings to avoid unnecessary attention. Aston stopped in front of a red brick building with 4 floors and looked around. It was the ancient merchant guild she had heard about in Lily's historical records. Wealth literally abounded all around. Jewels and gold coins poured out of every crack, and merchants offered everything that could be found in the world, demonstrating an incredible variety of goods. The sorceress carefully opened the door and entered, carefully examining the surrounding space, trying to catch every detail and understand what awaited her in the near future. Inside, as always, it was crowded. People sat at tables, immersed in animated conversations and everyday activities, creating a rich atmosphere full of vital energy and activity. In the distance, at a large stand, stood a creature carefully studying something on it. It asked the new client to wait for a few minutes, immersed in its own affairs and not interrupted by conversation. It turned out that it was a boy who was a werewolf in the form of a mouse. With a friendly and wide smile, he greeted the arriving guest who had joined the trading company. Having placed a golden sign on the table, the girl, with a determined look, announced that the woman's visit was caused by the need to obtain important information. The mouse looked curiously at the seal belonging to the second-level tower member. After that, he offered to provide the lady with the number she needed to obtain further information. However, Aston firmly rejected the offer and explained that the sorceress's real purpose was simply to gain information about the results of her previous training. The werewolf, with a friendly smile on his face, politely asked the lady to wait a little, and then, deftly climbing the wooden ladder, headed to the top shelf where important documents were kept. Soon, important documents and an old book appeared in their hands, each of which could contain key information needed to resolve issues. Looking at the papers, the boy explained that the lady had ordered a search for all types of time and space magic. In response, Igen, the leader of the Black Moon mercenary squad, had been obtaining an ancient book dedicated to magic for her. The young man politely handed the old book to the young lady, who was deep in thought and therefore did not immediately notice his gesture, as her attention was focused on her own thoughts and concerns. Using her mana, the lady read the title of the book about the missing magic. The information was sparse, but even this tiny clue revived the hope of returning home. Having thrown a coin to the little merchant, the beautiful sorceress curiously asked where she could spend a few years away from the capital to avoid prying eyes and not be discovered. Grabbing the sparkling gold, the little boy thought for a moment and then confidently announced that such a secluded place, ideal for stealth, really does exist on Earth. The young boy asked the lady to bend over to him, and in a whisper cautiously informed him that such a secluded place was located in the province of the great country of Maria Bell. The best was considered to be the port of Carlos, which was famous for its ships and provided excellent shelter due to its remoteness and strategic location. Before leaving, Aston sincerely thanked the mouse for his invaluable help, and then with a kind smile and a gentle wave of her hand, said goodbye and set off on her further journey. As she left the guild, the maiden hoped that after visiting the tower, she would be able to go to another place, and the port seemed to her an ideal option for continuing the journey, providing the opportunity for movement and new perspectives. Walking among the commoners, the lady remembered her important lesson with the teacher, and realizing how important it was not to be late for the lesson, she quickened her pace, trying not to waste a minute of time and to get to her destination as quickly as possible. Soon, a carriage park opened up before her eyes, where she noticed horse-drawn vehicles already lined up. The traditional carriages, sparkling in the sun's rays, created a picturesque picture. Aston accidentally bumped into another person, and their collision caused instant confusion. Immediately, the girl apologized, apologies pouring out of her mouth. The stranger turned out to be Lisian, who asked the lady to follow him to the carriage, explaining that there were too many curious eyes on the street, interfering with their conversation and creating unnecessary inconvenience. The surprised sorceress, deeply shocked by the fact that the guy managed to find her among many people, accepted his gaze with attention, full of delight and bewilderment, unable to believe in such an amazing coincidence. Their hands accidentally touched, and at that moment, like a magical touch, a thin thread of mutual understanding slipped between them, causing a feeling that time had slowed down and the surroundings had disappeared. Obediently got into the vehicle, not finding the strength to argue with the man who had so persistently offered her this convenient means of transportation. Noticing the unusual ring on her finger, the guy couldn't resist asking if this jewelry was magical. The lady's answer confirmed that the ring really did have magical properties. After this, Lisian noted with a smile that green eyes would suit the aristocrat better than black ones, adding that green color harmonizes better with a feminine, elegant image. The man folded his arms and confessed that he had been very worried when he learned of his mistress's escape from home. At the princess's request, he had begun to search for her, showing all his determination and concern. The nobleman looked away and replied with embarrassment that his answer was more like yes and no at the same time, since the situation was complicated and did not allow for a clear and short answer. Suddenly, sitting in the carriage, Aston realized that leaving Lily's story would be much more difficult than she had expected, because the characters stubbornly did not want to let the noblewoman go. Sitting opposite the man, the beauty curiously asked what prompted him to look for her, expecting to hear an explanation of the reason for their unexpected meeting and the revelation of the motive behind this unexpected visit. The sorceress felt awkward when she caught the gaze of her interlocutor, which seemed to reflect betrayal, filling the atmosphere with tension and understatement. Deciding to change the subject, the beautiful lady asked, with a smile, how things were going with Lily, trying to distract the interlocutor next to her from the tense conversation and return the conversation to its former ease and casualness. Lisian rose from his seat and asked with bitterness in his voice, was his companion really only interested in the princess, as if Aston's own feelings did not bother him at all? When the girl recoiled from the touch, the aristocrat slowly lowered his hand, as if realizing that the woman's detachment was an inevitable barrier between them. Instead, the guy gently took the lady's hand, as if trying to find in this gesture at least the slightest connection and confidence that there was still something important between them. Raising her hands innocently, Aston began to justify herself, explaining that she had simply been lost in thought and had accidentally grabbed the man's hand, not realizing how it could have been perceived. The girl felt uncomfortable in the guy's company, embarrassed and confused, and thought that it would be better for them to stop the meaningless conversation to avoid further awkwardness. Since the beautiful Lisian was silent, the sorceress, reaching for the transport door and trying to open it, decided to leave his company, hoping to get away from her friend, the sweet Lily, and finally find solitude. Lisian offered to escort the lady home, and looking at her with concern, asked if she was afraid that he was going to tell his relatives that the knights had been sent to search for the missing beauty. Looking down, the girl immediately realized that the guy had some personal business with her. She had long ago learned to read people after many years of humiliation and manipulation, which allowed her to understand hidden motives. Therefore, proudly raising her head and piercing the surrounding silence with her gaze, Aston confidently declared that she completely trusted the aristocrat, despite all the difficulties and trials she had experienced, which had tempered her soul and taught her to be insightful. The nobleman's cheeks flushed red, betraying his embarrassment and unexpected excitement, despite his determined attempts to maintain outward calm and control his emotions, no matter how hard he tried to hide the storm of feelings. Putting her hand to her chest, the beauty confidently said that she needed to head to the Tower of the Magicians, where her new home was located, emphasizing the importance of this place for future plans. Evening had come, and the sky was painted in bright shades of red, as the carriage slowly glided across the endless expanses of fields, creating a picturesque and peaceful landscape that captivated with its harmony and tranquility. Aston couldn't understand why the other person didn't react in any way to the fact that a noble girl had run away from her family, as if this event didn't cause him the slightest excitement or interest. During all this time, Lisian, deep in thought, looked thoughtfully out the window without showing the slightest interest or emotional reaction to what was happening around him. This man was Lily's first fiancé, and a symbol of victory, who survived 6 years of war to become the beloved of the entire country, and a knight of light, personifying the ideals of courage and honor. In the future, he could also become Lily's husband, which gave special significance to their relationship and emphasized the deep connection between them, as if fate itself had predetermined their future together, linking their destinies. The plot turned out to be much simpler than it seemed at first glance. A girl named Lily first lived in the Duke's house, and then, having acquired her real title, returned home, finally completing her journey. The girl lived in the capital, with her family winning the hearts of many men, and then married the main character, and so this is how the story, full of love and life's trials, ended. Until Lily came into her life, Aston lived in complete isolation, absorbed in reading a novel from cover to cover, which became her only consolation in her loneliness. Out of fear that the main character would soon appear and give her real hell, the girl sometimes felt like a real villain, cursing her future rival and worrying about how her own future would turn out. Aston still couldn't believe that, despite all the hostile feelings, a true friendship had blossomed between them. Together they walked through the flower fields, enjoying every minute of this new and wonderful union. Staring out the window and resting her face on her hand, the witch wondered what the real heroine was really like. Something had been bothering her since Lisian's arrival. Aston, the villain of the novel, rarely left the walls of her mansion, but she still appeared at public events from time to time, bringing her unique charisma and charm to them. Dressed in a bright red dress, the girl acted rudely and with obvious disdain, showing complete disrespect for the men standing behind her, as if their presence meant nothing to her. Someone accidentally or intentionally spilled wine on Lily's dress, ruining it and leaving visible stains on her beautiful fabric, which led to her embarrassment and irritation. darkening the evening and adding additional tension to the proceedings. Everyone made fun of the aristocrat's adopted daughter, mocking her embarrassment and humiliation, which only worsened the sad state and increased the girl's sense of isolation. Then Aston intervened, holding a fan in her hand, and with her presence and determined gaze, drew attention to herself and protected the girl from further humiliation. With one sharp movement, the aristocrat grabbed the servant by the hair, demonstrating her power and determination to stop the outrage and bring the situation back under control. Glaring angrily at those around her, Aston ordered that such behavior be stopped, immediately stating that it was completely unacceptable and unacceptable in any society. After this, the bullying of Lily stopped, and the nobles simply began to ignore her, leaving the girl alone, but without open ridicule and humiliation. Recalling this moment from the novel, the sorceress did not consider it important, since it did not leave a significant trace in her consciousness and did not have a special impact on the perception of events. As a child, whenever Aston bent the rules or broke any prohibitions, she was often punished by the page, who was responsible for discipline and upbringing. Thus, the lady's body quickly absorbed all the subtleties of etiquette and manners, becoming the natural bearer of all those rules and habits that were necessary for her social position. However, it was not difficult to understand the villain. She was afraid that Lily would take away her status, so she decided to target the knight, hoping to strengthen her position and eliminate the threat. For the same reason, Aston tried to avoid the protagonist, who sat in front of her as she feared that his presence could threaten her own interests and status. The lady, apologizing for her disturbance, asked the man with polite interest whether they had met by chance at the magnificent ball dedicated to the foundation of the country. Lisian had no right to answer such a question, and so despite his inner desire to say something, he chose to remain silent, remaining silent in response to curiosity. Aston countered that just because Lisian had promised her not to disclose information, that did not mean he could not break it, especially in light of the current circumstances. The sorceress solemnly promised that she would not reveal to anyone what she had learned, assuring everyone of her complete devotion to maintaining the important secret and showing unquestioning loyalty to these strict obligations. The man looked at the lady with his beautiful blue eyes, full of tenderness and respect. Finally, the coachman announced that they had arrived at their destination, interrupting their quiet conversation. Like a true gentleman, Lisian carefully held the door of the transport so that the lady could exit calmly and without unnecessary inconvenience, showing universal respect and concern for her comfort. With respect and courtesy, the male hand was ready to help the female hand, offering its unwavering support and assistance in any situation to ensure convenience. Aston accepted the help, when suddenly, a handsome man apologizing picked her up in his arms to carefully help her out of the carriage, showing exceptional care and attention. The girl blushed with embarrassment and, unable to withstand such unexpected attention, looked away, trying to hide her inner excitement and awkwardness caused by such a close and intimate gesture. Before leaving, Lisian, with an expression of sincere respect and goodwill, tenderly kissed the palm of his companion, uttering warm words of wishes for all the best and pleasant things, ending their farewell on a good note. Standing in the field, Aston watched the cart slowly drive away, feeling strange, caught up in the complex emotions that engulfed her from the fleeting glance and farewell. After that, she remembered her missed lesson, and realizing with horror how much time had been lost, she turned and ran towards the tower, trying to make up for lost time. A hand, in an elegant glove, held a watch when a voice with slight reproach announced that the student was 2 minutes and 30 seconds late, emphasizing the precision and strictness of time. The beauty awkwardly asked for forgiveness from the wise mentor, asking if she should write an explanatory note or document to justify her lateness and avoid further trouble. The man said that no explanation was required, and covering his mouth with his hand, asked that they switch to more personal names, creating a more relaxed and warm atmosphere of communication. They began the lesson with Hyven, sitting down on a chair and asking how much the girl knew about magic, trying to assess her level of preparation and understand at what level they should start training. Aston openly admitted that her knowledge of magic was limited. She knew only a few spells and could summon a familiar, explaining this by her limited experience and lack of practice in magic. Surprised, Hyven, with genuine interest, asked what the aristocrat would have done if he had not accepted her for training, trying to understand the beauty's future plans and ambitions. In fact, she had no specific plans. However, the main characters found each other, and having coordinated their actions, they danced together, sharing moments of mutual understanding and harmony. The lovely maiden was left alone, subjected to constant abuse from her family, which left the woman in a vulnerable and painful state, without support and understanding. Turning to the mentor, the sorceress said that magic has its own shortcomings, which can be compensated for by intensive study and application of techniques to achieve the desired result. Hyven, clearly upset, covered his face with his hand, realizing that the student had no other plan in case he did not accept the lady into his tower. He was disappointed, but also pleased, smiling, as he admitted that despite her lack of plans, the mage was pleased that Aston had come to him and shown a desire to learn. The beauty could not help but notice that her interlocutor seemed much kinder than before. His behavior and facial expression had changed, which gave him a warmer and friendlier appearance. Suddenly, the sorcerer pulled out a bag from which precious stones rained down on the table. They were going to focus on learning the very basics, using these stones as tools for a deeper understanding of magic. The question of the 3 laws of magic was raised, and at that moment, when all attention was focused on the discussion, the kitchen was right in front of them, providing a convenient and visual space. Aston, counting on her fingers, outlined the basic laws of magic. Equivalent exchange, which requires equivalent compensation. The strength of faith in magic, without which spells cannot be effectively performed. And non-contradiction of truth. Sitting on a chair nearby, Hyven added that, in reality, magical seals and spells are only tools that serve to embody the belief in magic. His hand sifted through the jewels, and the stone responsible for time and space. Magic was not among them, which caused some confusion and required additional explanations. The magician announced to the girl that she specialized in time magic, but also had a certain intersection and common features with other magical specialties, which expanded her capabilities. The color of the stone, which suited Aston, surprised the sorceress, as it was similar to the color of the eyes of the knight with whom the beauty had recently met, bringing back memories of a recent meeting. With her mouth open, the maiden was ready to swallow the stone, believing that it might be an integral part of the magical ritual and practice that she needed to perform in order to achieve her goal. Suddenly, mana, as if enclosed in an invisible bubble, surrounded the space, and a magical seal appeared, signifying the beginning of an important ritual or the activation of a magical process. Touching her hand to her stomach, she felt her mana begin to mix with the energy of the magic stone, creating a feeling of powerful interaction and harmony between her internal forces and the external source of magic. Touching the student's hand, the mentor asked her to perform a certain action aimed at further developing her magical skills. Pointing to one of the points on her wrist, the man asked the lady to inhale and exhale deeply, to create the necessary concentration and harmony in the process of magical interaction. Hyven nodded approvingly, saying that Aston was doing everything correctly, which helped her feel confident and continue performing the magical exercise without hesitation. Lowering the beauty's hand, the guy announced that she had an affinity for the element of water and that she had excellent control over her mana, demonstrating a high level of skill. The magic stone that had just been swallowed was made from the purest water collected from the fairy lake, which gave it special magical power and unique properties associated with the element of water. The astonished sorceress recoiled when she learned that she had swallowed a dangerous object that could manipulate the mind, causing anxiety and fear of possible consequences. The sorcerer didn't care at all that this angered the lady, since her fears and concerns about the manipulation of consciousness did not cause him any sympathy or regret. Now that the test was completed, they could begin the lesson. With a snap of his fingers, Hyven cancelled out the many purple seals, opening the way for further training and practice. After a few minutes, Aston lost her enthusiasm for studying, clutching the seal tightly in her hand, which felt heavy and required a lot of effort, which gradually undermined her motivation. Tired, she dropped her head into her hands, completely exhausted from the lectures and intense work, which led to a feeling of deep fatigue and the need to rest. A little earlier, the beauty tried to raise her hand and ask the mentor about the magic of time and space, trying to understand these complex aspects. But her attempt was immediately stopped by a sharp remark that in the Tower of Magic, every wizard was required to know the basics and fundamentals before moving on to more complex aspects, such as the magic of time and space. Before leaving, Hyven added that from now on, the lady would not only receive personal lessons from him, but also listen to lectures together with other magicians, which would provide her with a broader understanding and in-depth study of magical disciplines. Aston was excited, having lived in the body of a villain for a long time, and now she was given the opportunity to become someone else, which filled her with a new sense of hope and excitement. The girl's hands began to tremble with anxiety, and her fingers intertwined, creating a nervous feeling that could not be hidden. The inner excitement and fear of a new stage in her life became obvious to everyone around her. Without thinking twice, she told the teacher that she knew a little about the teachings of the magicians, hoping that this admission would help her better understand what knowledge and skills she would need to develop. Hyven said that this was nonsense and suggested that she call herself by the name Aston had been called at the school he taught at, to emphasize her true name and connection to magical traditions. The woman's hands relaxed, and the maiden said she would do so, deciding to follow the suggestion and use a name that would better reflect her true origin and connection to magic. In front of a large audience, the professor explained that each magician had a unique scent similar to a fingerprint, which served as an individual identifier and helped distinguish magicians from each other. Some students dozed off tired from the endless classes and lectures, creating a sense of uneven attention in the classroom. The atmosphere in the room was one of fluctuation in focus and energy from one seat to the next. The teacher's name was Soltis, and she was the elder of the Mage Tower. She was a woman in dark clothes and glasses, radiating authority and experience, which gave her an impressive appearance in the eyes of the students. As an example, the professor presented the genus Amorin, which combined notes of flowers and citrus, demonstrating the uniqueness and complexity of magical scents, which could be as varied and expressive as the magicians themselves. Students from different schools sat at their desks, yawning from fatigue, until one of them caught the attention of the strict teacher, which immediately broke her concentration and caused wariness. It was the lady from the forgotten school who carefully wrote down every word, not missing the slightest detail, which made her stand out from the rest of the students and attracted the attention of the teacher. Taking notes with chalk, the professor could not find anything special about the girl that would explain why the Tower of Magicians had chosen her. However, she could not go against the decision and continued to watch with cautious interest. Soon, the lecture came to an end, and the professor, having finished her speech, allowed the students to leave the classroom, giving them the opportunity to digest the knowledge they had received and to rest after the intensive lesson. Aston was in no hurry to get up from her seat, continuing to write something down on paper, concentrating on recording the important moments of the lecture and thinking about the knowledge she had gained. Suddenly, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by a guy who appeared behind her. He had white hair and blue eyes, which gave him a special memorable appearance. Aston smiled warmly as Yuden interrupted her deep thought. Her attention immediately turned to the new friend that had appeared in this place, and she became interested and happy in his presence. She quickly began to cross out the sketches, trying to erase the image of the knight's face that her hand had accidentally drawn on the paper so as not to leave any traces of the accidental drawing. Reaching forward, the boy happily announced that the lecture was finally over and it was time for lunch, which immediately attracted the attention of the students, eager to take a break. With a smile, the girl replied that it was time for her to go on an individual assignment and not to lunch since she had a lot of work to do. The guy promised to bring her food later, but in an instant his face suddenly darkened, expressing frustration, as if his thoughts were absorbed by something important and disturbing. Nose started bleeding, which immediately alarmed her friend, causing him to become concerned and want to help, as he saw her face turn pale and knew that immediate action was needed. The beauty covered her face with her hand, trying to hide her embarrassment and pain, which began to appear due to the blood, and thus felt how anxiety and shame intensified. The young boy jumped up from his seat and, speaking loudly, declared that the lady should have rested more to avoid such stress and discomfort. The beauty knew that no one would judge her, even if she stopped studying completely. However, she continued to take notes, diligently following her dedication and desire for knowledge. In addition to individual classes, in their specialization, the Mage's Tower also offered general courses, the purpose of which was to enable wizards to master the basic manners and knowledge necessary for their profession. Students walking through the corridors encountered differences in teaching between the closed schools and the open lectures that were not particularly useful. These open classes were conducted by elders. Aston, on her own, and with the help of a friend, was able to master the entire course material in just 1 month, demonstrating an impressive learning speed and deep understanding of the topic. She wanted to move on to higher magic, like water rushing down a slope, quickly and easily, to quickly reach new heights and opportunities in her training. Uden waved warmly as he said goodbye, asking her sincerely not to overexert herself and to remember to rest. The words were spoken with concern as a reminder of the importance of caring for her own well-being and recuperation. Among her classmates, Aston had the most classes, and this was due to the fact that she had a special place she sought to return to for solace. Writing on a clean piece of paper, the former noblewoman left a note that under the moon, a beautiful primrose bloomed, and during the day, the melody of a warbler sounded, filling the surrounding world with its magical charm. The tired lady stretched upwards, trying to loosen up her stiff muscles and ease the tension after a long day, trying to regain her energy and relaxation. Time flew by, and outside the window, it was already evening, enveloped in soft pink and deep purple light, which smoothly turned into gentle shades of twilight, creating an atmosphere of peace and cozy beauty. Aston reached out to the book, hoping to find a solution to create a portal home. Although she had not yet managed to fully decipher the method, she had made significant progress in her research, thanks to the materials from the trading company. The book stated that for space magic it is necessary to set an anchor at the point of arrival and ensure the availability of a small resource, which is energy. There should have been no problems, and Aston could have calmly set off on the ship on her journey home, confident that all the necessary conditions for the magical portal had been met. But she had difficulty in installing the star anchor in her house, and despite all her efforts, she could not understand anything. She was tormented by this question for a long time, feeling how her patience was beginning to wear out. Looking at the paper, the sorceress thought about using a spell on herself that could restore her memory. The little girl hoped that this would help her remember important details about her childhood. Before returning to her studies, Aston decided to grab a bite of the food that was on the stand. The short break allowed her to rest a bit and recuperate before continuing her work. As she ate the bun, the witch reflected that despite the fact that it had cooled down, it was still very tasty. The sweet and rich taste gave a little pleasure and comfort at that moment. After finishing her meal, the girl headed toward the door to get some fresh air and enjoy the walk. She was waiting for the opportunity to take a break from her studies, breathing in freshness and joy. But suddenly, the shoe froze in place, in front of the letter that lay on the floor, as if the attraction of an invisible force forced her to stop and pay attention to this unexpected and mysterious object. Taking the envelope in her hands, Aston wondered if this letter could be from Lily, the one she had asked not to look for. Thoughts of a possible connection with the request and the contents of the letter filled her mind. However, suddenly, the seal on the envelope attracted attention, which belonged to the Seymour family. This special sign, applied to the wax seal, was in the form of roses and iron swords. The lady insistently asked the messenger to return the letter back to the sender. She was determined to avoid any further trouble or misunderstanding connected with this unexpected message. The former aristocrat urged the man to no longer call her Lady Seymour, seeking to leave the past behind and free herself from previous titles and connections that no longer suited her current position and desires. Aston was now a sorceress of the Mage Tower. Her new duties and status required her to concentrate fully on magical training and the tasks associated with it. The man apologized to the young lady, explaining that he rarely had the opportunity to see noble ladies. His words were full of respect and humility, emphasizing that meeting her was a rare and significant event for him. With a smile, the lady ordered the cancellation of the meeting request from Lisian, who continued to persistently ask for the girl. Such persistence was too intrusive. Having closed the door behind her, the sorceress leaned against the wooden surface and remained in this position for some time, immersed in thoughts about the upcoming tasks and difficulties that lay ahead. With her head buried in her folded hands, the girl felt a deep weariness caused by the constant influx of letters from her family. These messages did not give her peace and only increased the emotional tension. Memories of the first week she spent in the Mage Tower came back to her mind. It was then that Hyven approached her, and those events remained a vivid and significant moment in her memory. Seated at a table in the reading room, the lady inquired what was the matter, and soon learned that an unexpected visitor had arrived. This news disturbed her peace, and she was ready to inquire into the reasons for his visit. Loud footsteps echoed across the floor, as if they were bouncing off a smooth surface, filling the space with a trembling sound. Walking at night in a thin cloak, Aston knew that the tower was closed to prying eyes. The high assembly strictly escorted unnecessary visitors away, not allowing a single uninvited guest. Having decisively opened the door, the lady was already anticipating who the mysterious night guest could be, whose presence in this place could raise so many questions and assumptions. In front of her stood Adrian, a young man with an expressive posture and short dark hair that gave his appearance severity and confidence, as if reflecting inner strength and determination. With a slight smile, the man greeted the lady. His greeting was permeated with courtesy and respect, creating an atmosphere of warmth and goodwill that instantly filled the surrounding space with comfort and harmony. After this, Adrian, with some satisfaction, reported what he had learned from the coachman. Aston had remained in the Tower of the Magicians all this time, and her location had been carefully hidden from prying eyes. With a heavy sigh, the sorceress asked why her brother had come here, clearly worried about the unexpected visit, and anticipating that such an appearance could lead to undesirable consequences. The man urged his sister to forget the other brother's words and return back. He was also curious to know how much the lady had paid to gain access to the tower, given the importance of the matter to their current plans. Placing his hand on the girl's shoulder, and with a soft insistence in his voice, Adrian said that if she decided to return home, her father would not punish her, thereby assuring her that everything could be fixed and everything could be returned to its place. As the grown man, who should have been a parent, began to rip out Aston's hair with a hot poker, his low voice was as indifferent and cold as the act of violence itself. Having knocked her brother's hand away, the girl loudly declared that she was not going to return home, and that she had not paid a penny for her position in the tower, but had entered there thanks to her own strength and abilities. Adrian was surprised that his younger relative had hidden abilities that manifested themselves unexpectedly and revealed new facets of a woman's personality to him. Shrugging his shoulders, the boy mockingly said that in that case the problems became less and that he would inform the director that the girl's family was against her entering the tower, emphasizing his disdain for the situation. With a sly grin, Adrian added that the lady's opinion did not matter to anyone, and everything was decided by their head of the family, thereby emphasizing that the final word always remained with the more influential members. The sorceress ordered the boy to stop talking. Strange nonsense, reminding him that she had been a student for a long time, and that it was impossible to change anything. Pointing his finger at his sister, the adult man suggested that she tell the master herself about her intention to return home. Otherwise, the consequences could be even worse. Aston became angry, and magic immediately began to flare up around her, as if her anger lacked a simple expression to manifest itself as a sparkling energy field. Suddenly, the door swung open, and Hyven entered the room, asking the guest to stop angering the lady, trying to smooth out the tense atmosphere and return the situation to a calmer channel. The young men stopped arguing and turned their heads towards the magician who had entered their attention, focused on him, expecting that the new presence could change the course of events. Master Amoran paused in the doorway, his gaze fixed on his charge. There was a thoughtful look in his eyes, as if he was trying to guess the maiden's thoughts. With a bright smile and friendliness, Adrian greeted the wise sorcerer, expressing sincere affection and creating a warm atmosphere around their meeting. Extending his hand forward, the boy respectfully complimented him, noting that the wizard had become even more powerful than he had been, before adding a note of admiration to his words. However, even without deigning to look at the aristocrat, even once silently passed by, as if he did not exist at all, leaving the friendly gesture unanswered. The sorcerer frowned harshly and asked the young man sharply what had brought the nobleman to the Tower of the Magicians and why he had dared to disturb his mentor at such an inopportune time. Adrian explained in a reserved manner that he had come to the Mage Tower to pick up his sister and bring her home, as the family had begun to worry about her prolonged absence and her future plans. The magician, watching the aristocrat with narrowed eyes, did not believe a single word he said, and in a cold and angry tone, sharply asked about the real reason for his visit, making it clear that he suspected hidden intentions. The sorcerer's brazen behavior caused a flash of anger in the man, and the veins on his hands bulged traitorously, betraying the growing anger that he was barely containing. Hyven coldly and briefly replied that the master's influence did not extend to the Tower of Magicians, adding that those who did not respect the laws of magic and tried to dictate their own rules were not welcome here. Clutching his head wearily, Adrian felt the intense headache building up to become unbearable, causing waves of tension and stress that built up throughout the day. Disappointed, he turned to his sister, informing her that he had apparently made a mistake and was in a difficult situation, realizing the seriousness of his decisions and actions. After this, the noble aristocrat sat down opposite the sorcerer, preparing for a serious and important conversation that required complete concentration and attention. Aston considered whether she should sit next to her older brother or her wise mentor to find the most comfortable and productive place for the discussion. The teacher made the choice easier for the diligent student by asking her to sit down next to him in order to avoid unnecessary thoughts and concentrate on the necessary discussion. Smiling gratefully, the lady sat down next to the teacher, despite the angry and displeased look of her relative, who did not hide his irritation and condemnation regarding the choice of seat. The aromatic tea flowing from the teapot into the cup slowly filled it, filling the air with thin steam and creating a cozy, peaceful mood. It was a surprise to the former aristocrat to learn that her mentor's scent consisted of delicate notes of magnolia and flowers of a tree she could not name, which gave his presence a mysterious and special charm. Adrian felt uncomfortable as he moved away from the wizard, as magic was new to him, and his confusion only made the man's condition worse. Holding on to the saucer, Aston realized that despite all their efforts, she and her brother were completely alien to each other, as if there was no connection between them, and they were trapped in a world where their differences only emphasized their isolation. Adrian loudly stated that their family, worried about their runaway daughter, could not understand how she was now coping without servants and any helpers, which emphasized her weakness and inability to solve problems on her own. The sorcerer considered it rude to ignore Aston's own opinion, and soon after he approached her with a question about what the beauty thought about returning home. Looking down, and with a slightly trembling voice, the girl, beautiful as a rose, admitted with incredible sincerity that she would not like to return anywhere, preferring to stay here and continue her studies. There was a noticeable negative aura coming from the brother, which filled him with awkwardness due to his sister's reaction, which created tension in their communication and left a feeling of discomfort. Hyven pointed out that the lady could have been a valuable asset to the family if she had mastered the art of magic, and then asked what specific reasons had prompted their family to decide to take the lady from the tower. The boy was shocked when the mage reported that Aston had become a precious source of income, surprised by such an unexpected and significant change in her fate. The thing was that the girl had reached the level of knowledge of a senior specialist in a week, and soon received the corresponding title, which was given to magicians who had mastered the last of the rules of magic. They would be tested at a council meeting, after which they would have the opportunity to advance up the career ladder, reaching the level of high elders and beyond. In the end, the knowledge achieved was not related to the level of magic or intelligence or anything like that. The main thing was that a person understood the logic and structure of the world, which was like a ball of science in his hands. The aristocrat clearly felt awkward from such words, and promised to discuss this issue with the head of the family to clarify the situation and find a suitable solution. At this point, the lady intervened, trying to find out some details from her brother, which attracted the attention of everyone present and added additional tension to the situation. Frustrated, she asked her relative if he truly believed that she had run away from home solely because she wanted to become a mage, hoping that her true motives would be understood. Surprised, the man stopped, and sincerely trying to understand the situation, asked what exactly the girl meant, trying to understand the words and figure out the reasons for her upset. With sadness, the lady realized that the foolish relative could never truly understand her sister's feelings and motivations, which only increased her inner loneliness and regret. The carriage, slowly gliding across the expanses of green fields, passed by picturesque landscapes, revealing to the passengers the enchanting beauty of the endless natural landscapes. Hyven sat next to the lady, worried and trying to hide from her that Aston was his student, worrying about how it could affect their relationship and future events. He was pleased to realize that the lady did not object, and a satisfied smile appeared on the man's face, expressing relief and joy from the positive attitude. Aston nearly dropped her tea when her mentor ordered her to not hold back when speaking to opponents like her brother, making it clear that she should not hide from her true emotions and opinions. Sitting in a comfortable chair, she sincerely thanked the young man for standing up for his ward, expressing her deep appreciation for his support, understanding, and care at such an important moment. Before leaving the lady alone, Hyven bowed and wished her that her path would be illuminated with truth and light, sincerely hoping for her well-being and the successful resolution of all problems. The drink had subtle notes of refined taste and sophistication inherent to the former aristocrat, which gave it a special charm and left a lasting impression reflecting the noble past. That day, the square was filled with noise and bustle, which made visibility difficult. Adrian was unable to see his sister and her mentor among the crowded chaos and abundance of movement. Approaching the small werewolf, Aston intended to leave a request to find one person, hoping that his abilities would help in this difficult task. Placing the coin on the table, the lady said she was looking for the nanny who had looked after her as a child, hoping to find the old woman and reconnect. When the sorceress felt tired, she sat on the edge of the fountain, letting the cool water touch her feet and enjoying the moment of peace that allowed her to rest and collect her thoughts. The people in the square were completely absorbed in their own affairs, each one busy with something of his own, creating a general feeling of seething life, constant bustle and activity that filled the place with energy and movement. Having taken out an old book, the girl immersed herself in the study of time travel, or more precisely, teleportation. In particular, trying to understand the intricacies of this mysterious ability. The spells and seals disappeared, leaving behind two portals. The amount of energy needed to move and activate them had to be calculated to ensure a stable and safe opening. Upset looking down, the maiden felt as if she had taken away some of her mentor's glory, but she was ready to do anything to return home to her world, despite her inner experiences and feelings of guilt. Suddenly, footsteps were heard, and a familiar voice greeted the lady, disturbing her thoughts and reminding her of the presence of a man with whom she had close ties. Realizing what had happened, the lady asked her acquaintance what exactly he wanted from her, hoping to clarify the reasons for the strange visit and his intentions. It was Lisian, dressed in magnificent white robes, strewn with jewels that shimmered in the light and emphasized his high status and refined taste. The sorceress, with obvious bewilderment and slight surprise on her face, asked what exactly had brought such an attractive young man to this secluded place. The man sat down next to his interlocutor and with a slight smile said that it was hard not to notice a girl like her, especially when she was holding such an expensive artifact in her hands that attracted attention and interest. The couple then began to discuss the good weather as they sat next to each other and enjoyed the pleasant atmosphere, which allowed them to relax and exchange light conversations. Noticing that evening was approaching, Lisian stood up and asked if it was time for Aston to head back to the Mage Tower, worried that she would not miss any important events or disrupt her routine. After this, the nobleman extended his hand to his companion and, in a polite tone, said that he would like to escort the beauty back to ensure her safe return and make the evening even more enjoyable. Smiling, Lisian politely asked Aston if she had any objections to the proposed solution, trying to make his words soft and charming. The lady had no choice but to accept the invitation with dignified calm, and maintaining outward composure, gracefully extend her hand despite her inner doubts. Their hands touched tenderly, as if in this simple but meaningful gesture, not only fingers but also hearts were connected, opening a new stage in their relationship full of unknown emotions and feelings. Slightly embarrassed but trying to maintain his composure, the aristocrat asked in a reserved manner whether he would be allowed to do the honor of accompanying such a beautiful lady next time. Aston could not allow herself to get used to this man's kindness, because behind every manifestation of his care, she felt a hidden strength that she did not dare to fully trust. Noticing the prolonged and unusual silence of his companion, Lisian, worried by her thoughtfulness, asked with gentle persistence what could have happened. The lady replied, with a slight smile, that everything was fine, but at the same time delicately freed her hand from the soft, almost elusive grip of her charming companion, hiding her true feelings behind politeness. Without wasting any time, Lisian, with impatience and determination, asked the sorceress to follow him quickly, pointing the way and guiding them to the right place in order to reach the goal as soon as possible. The sorceress stopped thoughtfully, holding the coin in her hand, remembering the old legend that if you throw gold into the fountain, then your wish will certainly come true. She wondered whether she should take advantage of this chance. Soon the coin was thrown with all its might into the sparkling water of the fountain, and as it flew through the air, it emitted sparks before disappearing into the depths, leaving a light splash on the surface. Aston's sincere wish was for the two people dearest to her to be able to rejoice and enjoy happiness together, sharing their love and support with each other. At the same time, the sorceress also wanted them to forget about the existence of their friend, hoping that their lives would be filled with joy and happiness, free from the worries and anxieties associated with her presence. Concerned by the sudden stop of his companion, Lisian also froze in place, not knowing what could have delayed the lady so abruptly, and carefully watched the woman's actions, hoping to understand what was happening. The sorceress froze in place as her name was called from the dark shadows. Her body instantly tensed in surprise, and she stood motionless listening to the familiar but long unheard voice. It was Hyven, who wanted to have a serious talk with the student, and his voice, full of hidden tension, reminded him of the importance and urgency of the upcoming conversation. When asked about what had happened, Aston learned that the Empress would soon be organizing a ball, and the magician had received an invitation. The wizard could take 2 other sorcerers with him, which gave the event special significance and intrigue. It came as quite a shock to the former aristocrat that the mage was allowed to take 2 other sorcerers with him, adding an unexpected element of significance and exclusivity to the event. Clutching his head in despair, Hyven emphasized that the lady with her unrivaled elegance and grace was the best and most suitable choice to accompany him to the ball, which could brighten up any evening. The sorceress simply could not resist the persistent and sincere request of the sorcerer, so overcoming her internal doubts, she decided to give in, submitting to his will. The cart moved slowly along the winding road, the wheels creaking as they rolled over the bumps and uneven surfaces, creating a rhythmic, soothing sound that mingled with the noise of the wind. Elder Azius was a beautiful elf with snow-white hair and bright yellow eyes. He remarked that it would be much easier to teleport than to travel on foot through all these forests and mountains. Hyven waved his hand and calmly explained that it was too dangerous to openly display his abilities in front of Aston, as it could attract unnecessary attention and put everyone at risk. The lady sat next to the elder, feeling how fatigue was gradually taking over. The long trip no longer brought any pleasure or new impressions. The beautiful maiden was eager to demonstrate her abilities, and the upcoming great gathering of magicians seemed like the perfect opportunity. Finally, they arrived at the place, and before them appeared a majestic blue castle with high walls, decorated with ancient patterns and towers reaching into the sky. However, Aston was in no hurry to get out of the carriage, fearing to run into familiar aristocrats at the ball whose presence could disturb the peace and cause unwanted conversations. Noticing the young charge's worried state, Hyven gently asked about her well-being, showing genuine concern and interest in her inner state. The witch muttered that everything was fine, and feeling the need to express gratitude or support, placed her hand on the man's palm. The butler bowed politely to the gentleman, and showing respect, offered to escort them inside, ready to fulfill any request and ensure their comfortable accommodation. Where they arrived, nobles were already flocking, immersed in the festive atmosphere. There was a lively bustle all around. The guests were enjoying the evening reception, discussing the latest news. At the ball, unmarried young people, boys and young girls, especially stood out. Their lively conversations and joyful smiles gave the evening a special atmosphere. Perhaps that is why from the Seymour family, only Aston was invited, who in her red dress, reminiscent of a scarlet flower, stood out among the guests, attracting attention and emphasizing her special position. Walking along with the elf and the mentor, the lady noticed that the guests were seated according to factions, and their seats were closest to the Empress, which emphasized their important position at the ball. Out of the corner of her eye, sitting at the table, Aston noticed Lisian among other aristocrats, elegantly seated in a company that attracted attention with its luxury and grandeur. Lisian also noticed the sorceress, and without attracting unnecessary attention, quietly whispered with his lips that he was glad to see her, expressing sincere joy and recognition in his gaze. Aston shyly raised her hand to her face, trying to hide her emotions and hide the slight blush that appeared on her cheeks when she felt another person's attentive gaze on her. It was strange that among the aristocrats, there was no Lily the princess, whose absence from this important event seemed especially noticeable and unexpected. Seymour clutched her dress in her fists, feeling uncomfortable without her best friend, whose presence always supported her and helped her cope with the stress. The lace-gloved fingers raised a glass of bright red drink, and the woman thanked everyone for their presence, her voice filled with genuine appreciation and joy. It was the lovely Empress Jadis, who looked strikingly like her daughter. With her fair hair and gray eyes, she radiated a special charm, dressed in an elegant red dress. The daughter of the Marquise d'Asanta, Renata, with blood-red hair, declared that the Star Garden blooms more beautifully and magnificently every year, emphasizing the exquisite nature and endless charm. Aston suddenly intervened in the conversation, asking if the princess would be attending the ball. Her voice betrayed genuine interest and a slight concern about whether her old friend would be with her. With a smile, the Empress said that her daughter was not feeling well and unfortunately would not be able to attend the event, which caused some regret. Covering her mouth with her hand, Seymour was deeply upset that Lily had fallen ill, her face expressing genuine concern and sadness over the princess's condition. There is a fairly high probability that this is the reason why the princess did not respond to the letters that were sent to her. The witch expressed her best wishes to the royal family member, wishing him a speedy recovery, and asked when he would be allowed to visit the princess. The ruler froze in place when a servant leaned towards her and quietly whispered that a daughter of royal blood was soon to appear, which caused her unexpected excitement and anxiety. A woman's shoe stepped onto the soft grass, and the dress and shoes were exquisitely decorated with fresh flowers, which gave the image an indescribable elegance and freshness. Jadis jumped up from her seat, excited and nervous, when the announcement of the heir to the throne's grand arrival sounded in the hall, and her heart pounded in anticipation. For the young sorceress, this was a real shock that penetrated into the very depths of her soul, causing strong excitement, which she tried with difficulty to hide, so as not to betray her feelings. Lily, as before, retained her beauty. Her pink hair was elegantly braided into a high ponytail, and her green outfit emphasized her sophistication and charm. The mother, noticing that her daughter was still not completely healthy, began to feel anxious because the baby had not yet fully recovered, and her health was causing her serious concern. The nobles around began to whisper, calling the princess a spring fairy, since the light dress in which she appeared before them was chosen by her eldest beloved brother. When Lily looked away, ignoring her old friend, Aston felt great horror and deep pain, as if her fragile heart had been pierced by a sharp blade of betrayal. Unable to bear the company of other aristocrats any longer, the girl stood up from her seat and, turning to those present, said that she should go out into the fresh air to rest a little. Lisian was trying to stop the beauty because his heart was constricted with concern for her condition, and the guy was worried that she could get into a dangerous situation, not realizing all the possible consequences of her actions. But instead, he just clenched his fist, his indecision in the air, and silently watched the wonderful lady leave, unable to break the silence. A picturesque lake spread out before our eyes, surrounded by majestic trees and a cozy meadow, creating an ideal corner of nature that embodies tranquility. Hidden among the thick trees, Aston covered her mouth with her hand, suppressing a yawn, thereby showing her fatigue and obvious need for rest after a long and stressful day that had taken a lot of her strength. Lisian and Lily walked together, holding hands, their steps hitting the ground in sync, creating a sense of closeness and mutual support. They seemed to be the embodiment of an ideal couple, the prince and princess of the kingdom. Their joint walk resembled a picture from a fairy tale, where harmony and elegance are combined in one image. At this time, the mighty Hyven was in a tense argument with the elder. Their conversation was full of emotions and sharp words reflecting deep disagreements and discontent. Suddenly, footsteps were heard, and a loud voice rang out, calling out the name of the noble Lady Seymour in a calling tone, breaking the tense atmosphere and drawing attention to itself. This man with piercing brown eyes and white hair was the third groom of the main character, the heir of the Marquis of Diasanta. His name was the young Marquis Archon. Like a true ladies' man, the man gallantly kissed Aston's hand, and with a charming smile said that she was the most beautiful rose in this greenhouse, bringing a touch of exquisite charm to her day. Archon felt awkward and embarrassed when the lovely lady rejecting his advances pointed to Lily, whose smile would have become even brighter from such witty compliments. While walking together, the boy asked the young lady with interest if she knew the legend surrounding the famous river, which was known for its mysterious and exciting stories. Officially, there were 5 societies in the country, but there was also a 6th, which was secretly created by Archon and operated underground, hiding from official structures and attracting attention only to a narrow circle of initiates. According to legend, 99 years ago, there lived a distinguished princess named Isla, who was not only a noble princess, but also a recognized knight throughout the continent, becoming the king's first protector. However, the lady's fiancé, having gotten drunk, committed a gross outrage against the maid, for which he was executed. The fiancé's elder brother, having learned of what had happened, decided to take revenge on the princess, blaming her for his brother's death. Lavendin was a magician who decided to get close to the royal family. Every night he would give the royal person nightmares, and then by calming her down, help her fall asleep again. Mesmerized, Aston listened to the story, in which the couple soon fell in love. Princess Isla made a promise to protect her new husband, demonstrating her devotion and love for him. However, the knight was supposed to continue the royal line, and the death mage did not meet the requirements for the role of husband. Despite his devotion, he could not be a suitable partner to continue the dynasty. The king ordered his daughter to marry the candidate of his choice, and despite her inner doubts and protests, the girl could not disobey her father's order, submitting to his will. So the death mage was left behind, and Isla married another man, chosen by her father, fulfilling the demands of the royal house and ensuring the continuation of the dynasty. Aston reflected that the ending of the story was strange. It would have been more logical if the couple in love had married secretly from the king in order to preserve their love and avoid a forced marriage under the order. Finally, unable to bear the betrayal, the magician threw himself into the water and drowned. Isla, unable to find his body, looked into the water for so long, out of melancholy and despair, that she eventually turned into a statue. The aristocrat concluded his story by noting that in honor of the knight who brought so much suffering and sacrifice, the river was named after him, to perpetuate his memory and feat in history. The guy pointed his finger at the river, visible nearby, as if it were living evidence of the ancient and beautiful history that had just been discussed. It was a very sad story about a maiden and a knight who showed true valor despite all the obstacles and tragedies that befell their destinies. The boat ride has become a tradition established in memory of 2 lovers who were not destined to be together, as a symbol of their eternal love and unfulfilled destiny. Suddenly, Lisian intervened in the conversation, expressing a desire to take the lady away from the marquis and go boating with her, offering her a pleasant time on the water. The nobleman was serious as always and looked like a real prince, with an elegant posture and indescribable nobility in every detail of his true appearance. Archon was not ready to part with his companion and hand her over to another man. To this, Lisian loudly declared that the princess had already left, and therefore he was now free to communicate. Bowing politely, Archon did not insist any further and handed the lovely lady over to other hands, giving someone else the opportunity to continue the game. A man's hand was extended towards Aston, radiating friendliness and warmth, as if inviting her to take part in the upcoming event. The girl gently placed her hand in the other man's outstretched hand, as if seeking comfort and support. The gesture was full of trust and warmth. The 2 of them set sail on a boat filled with flowers, enjoying the coziness and romance of this thrilling journey through the vast expanses of water. Arkun got into another boat and was already entertaining the second lady, skillfully creating an atmosphere of fun and ease while they enjoyed the moment on the water together. Smiling slyly, the aristocrat said that the lady would definitely not be able to escape from this place, confident that his words would emphasize not only his cooperation, but also a slight mockery of the situation. Aston responded that there was no point in them meeting anymore, emphasizing that everything that needed to be said had been said, and they could calmly part ways without creating unnecessary unrest. Lisian did not think that any special reason was needed for their meeting, believing that the very fact of their communication was sufficient to satisfy both of them. The man was extremely puzzled and shocked to hear the lady admit that she did not understand why he sought meetings with her so often. With her hands folded in front of her, the beauty asked if they had met before, as she had lost some of her memories and could not remember the details of their past meetings. Not believing a single word of his companion, Lisian noticed that the effect she described was impossible and began to seriously doubt the sincerity of her words, suspecting that something else might be hidden behind such a story. Eventually, the aristocrat came to the conclusion that the Seymour family had probably done something to their daughter's memories, given the strange and incomprehensible changes in her behavior and the loss of some of her memory. When she began to talk about how things weren't so cloudless in the Aston family and how they didn't always love each other, the noblewoman suddenly fell silent, covering her mouth with her hand, as if she realized that she had said too much. The real villainess sought to win Lily's husband, since Lisian was valuable to her rival and seemed unattainable, like a spark in her hands, which only fueled her desire to win him. At the coming-of-age celebration, which took place at an elegant ball, the atmosphere was filled with luxury and solemnity. The noblewoman sighed heavily, inhaling the aroma of moonshine, and began to awkwardly enter the hall, not wanting to be present at this event. The mood was completely ruined. The other ladies of high society had been whispering among themselves all this time, and quietly mocking Lady Seymour, exchanging sharp remarks and glances full of superiority and irony. Suddenly, Lily appeared, and with warmth in her voice, asked her old friend how she was doing, sincerely interested in her condition and wanting to bring a little light mood into the atmosphere of the ball. They were soon joined by another aristocrat, who greeted the princess of the country with a genuinely joyful mood, expressing his satisfaction that she was in good health. Aston grabbed Lily's hand, trying to help her deal with the pushy nobleman, whose persistent attempts to start a conversation were becoming a real challenge. The beauty invited her friend to go and dance, hoping that a change of scenery and a little fun would help to distract her and ease the tension that arose because of the persistent nobleman. The princess smiled broadly and agreed to her savior's offer, feeling relieved and grateful for the opportunity to take a little break and enjoy the dance. However, history soon took a familiar turn again, and Lisian appeared, whose unexpected arrival once again attracted the attention of everyone present and changed the atmosphere of the event. The girl was interrupted by a stranger who sharply remarked that it was extremely impolite to spy on other people from behind curtains. His comment attracted attention and caused surprise. A beautiful dark-haired lady distracted Lady Seymour, dressed in a magnificent sky blue dress. Her elegant attire and graceful presence were admired. This wonderful maiden was the daughter of the Earl of Emmental, and her name was Beltana. She noticed that Lady Seymour had disappeared from sight and came up to see if all was well with the young lady. Aston could even blink. The aristocrat's second daughter pulled her by the hand, asking her to be quicker and not to hesitate, thereby accelerating their movement to the next stage of the event. As she walked forward, the noblewoman sneered at Lady Seymour, who looked restless and confused, which only added to her tension and discomfort in the situation. Opening the door, the lady loudly declared that Aston was tired in front of the other nobles, drawing attention to her fatigue and emphasizing that she needed some rest. Not wanting to become the object of ridicule from other aristocrats again, Aston did not allow herself to be offended and resolutely pulled her hand out of the grip of the impudent daughter of the Count, trying to maintain her dignity. Having interrupted her social life, the lady loudly declared that she no longer wished to be called or distracted for such stupid reasons, resolutely defending her right to peace and respect. Instead, Lady Seymour began to attack the offender, declaring that she was stupid and could not let go of grievances that had remained from childhood. The words were full of reproach and disappointment. Naturally, Beltana began to be indignant, vehemently denying all accusations and protesting against criticism. The reaction was full of indignation and attempts to protect her reputation. Thus the lady left the hall and was now sailing on a boat with the handsome man of the country, enjoying the solitude and fresh air, away from the hustle and bustle and intrigue. With care in his eyes, the man carefully took off his cloak and tenderly covered his companion with it, trying to protect her from the cold wind and create a feeling of warmth and comfort, showing attention and care in every gesture. With a light and charming smile, Lisian noted that he had received a handkerchief from his interlocutor, thus emphasizing how touching and thoughtful this gesture was, which made a deep impression on him and added warmth to their conversation. Then their hands accidentally touched, and the lady, feeling in this moment a symbol of deep mutual understanding, tremblingly thanked the nobleman for his attention and sincere kindness, which made this evening special. Suddenly, it started to rain, and the nobleman tried to stop his companion, who, throwing her cloak on the ground, turned away, trying to hide from the unpleasant weather surprise. Lisian extended his hand and invited the sorceress to come along, offering her his company and protection so that they could overcome the rain and enjoy their time together, despite the bad weather. After accepting the man's help, Aston went with him under a tree, where they found a dry place, sheltering from the rain and enjoying a short rest in a more comfortable environment. That day, Lisian chose to stay with the noblewoman instead of returning to the ball, which clearly demonstrated his sincere desire to spend time in her company and enjoy her company more than the hustle and bustle of the holiday. The rain gradually subsided, and Aston suggested that they return to the ball, noting that the atmosphere had once again become suitable for continuing the social event. After the downpour, the sky remained gray, but soon it began to clear, and the sun's rays began to break through the clouds, creating a pleasant and calming light. The gentleman politely extended his hand to his companion to help her carefully descend from the boat to the ground, showing true nobility and concern for her comfort and safety. Their hands touched, and after a while the aristocrat hastened to remove his palm from the lady, feeling that the moment of intimacy had already ended, and striving to maintain an invisible boundary between them. Aston watched as the nobleman gradually dissolved into the dense crowd, his figure slowly disappearing among the many guests until he was completely out of sight, leaving only the memories of his presence. Seymour looked closely at her hands, still feeling the light touch of the handsome man, which left a deep and pleasant trace in her memory, reminding her of the moment when their fingers touched. Suddenly, a maid appeared with a tray, and approaching the young lady, she announced that the organizers had prepared a small gift for the guests, which was carefully wrapped and promised to pleasantly surprise everyone. It turned out to be a small blue bag, neatly packed and tied with a thin ribbon, which immediately attracted attention with its sophistication and the intriguing mystery of its contents. To her surprise, the noblewoman found in the bag 2 chess knights that Lily had liked so much before. The unexpected gift, carefully selected and with special attention, caused her a feeling of joy and delight. Hiven suddenly appeared from behind, and his sudden appearance greatly frightened the ward. Such an appearance disturbed her calm, and she turned around sharply, feeling alarm and anxiety. The girl awkwardly thought that it was the first time she saw 2 guys sailing on a boat on such a special day. This moment, full of unusual charm, attracted attention and left a vivid impression. Before leaving the room, Aston suddenly remembered that she had left her cape behind. She asked the teacher to wait a few minutes so that she could return and retrieve the forgotten item. Out of the corner of her eye, The noble lady noticed how the adult maids were vigorously shaking the sheets, trying to freshen them up and give them a neat appearance, filling the air with a light noise and bustle. An aristocrat's cloak was neatly laid out on one of the chairs, its elegant folds giving it a special atmosphere of nobility and sophistication. As she put on the elegant cape, Aston was surprised to notice something unusual and strange lurking ahead, as if a mystery was waiting to be solved. Standing by one of the building's columns was a figure with long curly pink hair that cascaded down to the ground, like a waterfall, creating a mesmerizing contrast with the architecture. In complete shock, the sorceress recognized this mysterious figure as Lily, who, despite her skills in hiding and disguise, was clearly recognizable by her characteristic appearance. Realizing that she had been discovered, the girl quickly turned away and attempted to escape, trying to hide from the eyes that were now watching her actions with interest. Lily turned out to be that same innocent, blooming soul that once illuminated Aston's sad existence with her bright colors, bringing light and joy into life. Determined to realize that if she did not act now, the chance to see the young princess could disappear forever, the maiden realized that she had to act immediately, otherwise she would easily miss this unique opportunity. With a quick step, which soon turned into a run, the sorceress rushed along the path, pursuing her old friend, hoping to catch up with her before the beauty disappeared from sight. There, behind the tree, stood the princess in the company of a man. Their figures were partially hidden by the shadows of the foliage, creating a mysterious and intriguing scene, full of hints of secret negotiations and unspoken feelings. Standing still, Aston watched the scene, where Lily begged her older brother not to include the lady in the number of his conquered victims, and to leave her alone. The beauty asked excitedly if the boy was going to involve the Tower of Mages in this matter. The woman's voice trembled with anxiety, reflecting fear of the possible consequences and uncertainty that such a decision could cause. The Empress's eldest son, named Cassius, was ready to resort to extreme measures, a handsome young man with pink hair like his sister. The sorceress was completely perplexed, wondering how a relative of her old friend had ended up here at such an important and unexpected moment when everything seemed full of mysteries. After fixing her hair, Lily asked what her brother planned to do with his wife after he used his connections, stole the emperor's throne, and carried out his ambitious plans. The boy felt sick at the thought that he could hurt someone, and as a result, he grabbed his head, turned pale, and his face expressed deep shock and fear. Lily loudly declared that she understood her relative perfectly well and was extremely dissatisfied with the fact that the cunning Cassius was hiding some big secrets that, in her opinion, should be revealed immediately. Suddenly left alone, the prince ordered Aston to come out of hiding and appear without hiding behind the tree. The man's voice was stern and commanding, as if he would not tolerate any excuses. Blushing slightly with excitement, the lady standing before the future heir to the throne embarrassedly admitted that she had not managed to hear much of their short and important conversation, which seemed to be full of significance and secrets. A conversation ensued between them, during which Aston tried to find out what secret the prince was hiding. However, the prince turned out to be extremely taciturn and stubbornly avoided directly answering questions. The lady insisted that since they were discussing her, she had every right to know what secrets were hidden behind what was happening, and demanded that all the details and nuances of their conversation be revealed to her. With a smile on his lips, the man said that Aston should not have known more. After which, the heir to the throne noted that the maiden had always been very perceptive. As children, Lily and the villainess were often invited to balls of noble families where they had to behave with special caution and avoid saying unnecessary words. However, things did not go according to the adults' plan, since no one knew that the little lady with pink hair was a princess. Therefore, she often found herself in the center of attention along with the prince. At this time, Aston, comfortably settled in a corner, sat leaning against the wall and was deeply immersed in reading her book, completely forgetting about everything around her. Despite the fact that the aristocrat often spent time alone, Cassius always showed sincere kindness and care to the baby, compensating her for the lack of communication. Being kinder than the maiden's own family, he often offered to spend time with Aston, inviting her to have a cup of tea or take a walk in the fresh air to lift her spirits. Concerned, the lady wondered what could have happened to Lily. The sorceress began to worry that it could be that her family had not accepted her, leaving her alone and forgotten. A struggle for the throne could also begin, and the blade could easily turn red if the conflict escalated and led to violence and bloodshed. Grabbing the nobleman by the hand, the lady insistently asked him to promise something important that could significantly affect their future and general well-being. Holding the prince by the sleeve of his shirt, the lady insistently asked him not to quarrel with Lily and to treat each other with respect like real family members. Aston looked down and allowed herself to be slightly impudent towards the royal person, realizing that in this situation it might be acceptable and even necessary to achieve her goal. It turned out that everything was the other way around. The man actually cared about his sister. Finally, they arrived at the right place, where their paths were supposed to diverge. At the final stop of their journey, a carefully prepared carriage awaited the lady, accompanied by a mysterious sorcerer, ready to set off for the majestic Tower of Magic. Cassius wished the lady a good journey with a friendly and sincere warmth, hoping that the path would be easy and safe, and that every mile would bring only positive emotions. The sorcerer, standing next to the transport, noticed that Aston was slightly late and expressed his observation with a slight hint of concern as he waited for her to appear. There, in the distance by the garden, stood an aristocrat, watching the transport carefully, his gaze focused on the approach of the people who were about to leave the imperial chambers. He even turned away, silently, carefully closed the carriage door, and let them set off on their way without saying a word, immersed in his thoughts and not distracted by what was happening. Looking at the reflection of the glass, the lady was sad as she was unable to say goodbye to her old friend, and this feeling of sadness was reflected in the noblewoman's expression. The tower stood majestically, radiating a magical aura that enveloped it in a mystical glow and attracted the attention of everyone who passed by, as if luring them into its magical world. The woman's hand, holding the pen, froze in mid-air as its owner checked the spells for correctness, scanning each line with particular attention. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers and drafts, the lady felt deep happiness and satisfaction as she saw her efforts and hard work crowned with success. Jumping to her feet with joy, the girl enthusiastically shouted that she would finally be able to return to her home, where comfort and peace awaited her, and where she could enjoy the long-awaited feeling of home warmth. The noblewoman resolutely grabbed the bottle of poison that she needed to drink. Her face remained imperturbable and did not show the slightest sign of hesitation or fear, despite the seriousness of the upcoming step. Closing her eyes, the lady realized that she was about to separate her soul from her body, striving to come as close as possible to the end of her life's journey. Her thoughts were deeply concentrated, and she prepared herself for this final step. The antidote was carefully placed in a prominent place, serving as a symbol of hope for salvation in case of unforeseen circumstances, as a sign that even in the most difficult situations, there is a possibility for salvation. Grabbing the bottle of poison in her hand, the girl standing in the seal circle plunged into deep thought, considering whether she should leave this strange world or stay with her friends. Having made the decision to leave, the aristocrat felt her consciousness rapidly sinking into the abyss, as if she were falling into a bottomless pit, surrounded by darkness and the unknown. The glass cracked with a deafening roar, and sharp shards flew in different directions, filling the air with the sounds of destruction, as if tearing the silence into pieces. Even without the villain, Lily had many loyal friends, a loving lover, and a supportive family, which created an atmosphere of warmth and care around her. Despite all the difficulties, the darkness suddenly dissolved, giving way to the water element, and the lady found herself immersed in cold, icy depths where the water gradually wrapped around her entire body, as if trying to pull her into the bottomless expanses. Aston lay on the floor, lifelessly sprawled and unconscious, her body motionless, as if bereft of all control and power, like a helpless puppet left without support or life. Having poked her head into the void, the girl did not immediately realize where she was. Her consciousness slowly returned to reality, trying to understand the space around her. Suddenly, the boy rushed to hug the witch, enthusiastically telling her that they had once known each other, as if trying to restore the lost connection and restore forgotten memories. It was Lisian Ortez, but in the younger guise of a teenager, who greeted his old friend with a sincere smile, happy to see her again after a long time. The boy grabbed his companion by the hands, asking with anxiety in his voice what was happening in the outside world. The tone of his voice was full of anxiety and impatience to learn about events. This place turned out to be a point of contact between the black and red conscious worlds, where reality intersected with the unconscious, creating a space filled with conflicting energies. Smiling, the boy muttered that it would be easier if Aston perceived what was happening as a dream, since it would ease the situation with the ambiguity and strangeness of the events, allowing her to perceive them with less stress and anxiety. The boy congratulated the noblewoman on becoming an elder, noting that she would now have the opportunity to recall all of her old dreams, which could reveal important truths. Smiling happily, Lisian added that he was especially pleased when his interlocutor addressed him by his nickname, as if this created a special connection and warmth of memories between them. Suddenly, the boy felt ill. His face was distorted with pain, and he began to cough, emitting a scarlet liquid. With each attack, weakness took hold of him more and more, as if strength was rapidly leaving his body. With hatred in his voice, the boy muttered that it had already learned that Aston was unconscious, and this knowledge only increased its rage. It could take advantage of the girl's vulnerability. Frowning in confusion, the sorceress asked what exactly Lisian meant. The woman's voice was full of confusion, as if she was trying to make sense of the mysterious words. With fear in her eyes, Seymour listened as they explained to her that if the creature caught her, then all her memories would disappear again, leaving her in a void of oblivion with no way to restore the past. Grabbing his companion by the hand, the little lord began to urge Aston on with excitement, insistently hurrying him. Every second was crucial, and delay could cause too much. Behind them, a huge red snake with fangs as sharp as daggers was chasing at a frightening speed. An ominous hissing sound was heard in the air, increasing the sense of impending danger. The aristocrat, screaming loudly, confessed in despair that he himself did not know what this terrible monster was. He was trembling all over with fear and helplessness before this terrible unknown threat. Suddenly, without thinking, they jumped into the shining portal, hoping that it would take them away from the approaching threat, leaving behind the creepy snake and the darkness that seemed to consume everything around them. They found themselves in a familiar room where Aston and Lily once lived together. Everything around looked exactly the same as before. Cozy objects, a light smell of flowers, bringing back memories of old times. The lady cried out in despair that she needed to return back to the real world. The realization of having to leave this world and return to reality became an unbearable burden. Surprised, the boy asked where exactly Aston wanted to return, to which she replied that she wanted to return to her true home, as she was a time traveler who ended up there as a result of unforeseen circumstances. Lisian thoughtfully replied that she would definitely succeed because this house and everything in it were created especially for her and belonged only to her as part of her own world. The girl nodded in agreement, deciding to first move to another place and then think over all the circumstances in order to better understand the situation and make an informed decision. A plant, like an ancient drain, rose from the grass cover, as if it had grown from the earth itself, its green leaves pushing through the green carpet, creating a contrast. Together, they found themselves in a star garden, that was filled with flowers and shrubs blooming in sparkling hues, as if enveloped in heavenly lights, creating an atmosphere of magic and enchanting light. The sorceress, with exquisite grace and calm, took the outstretched hand, allowing the boy to lead. She followed him willingly, confident that knowledge and intuition would help them explore this wonderful world. With every step, the aristocrat's body became smaller and smaller, as if her physical form was gradually dissolving into thin air, returning her to the early years of childhood, when the lady was just beginning her journey in this world. It didn't matter to the guy whether she was the real Aston or not. What mattered to him was that he would always be on the sweet maiden's side, ready to support her, no matter the circumstances. When they reached the same height, Aston stopped, and looking at the boy, asked if he would continue to do this if the noble woman herself could not trust him. Lisian didn't mind being the only one who had complete faith in the sorceress. For him, it was not just a matter of honor, but also an expression of deep devotion. The world began to distort and swim before my eyes, as if the boundaries of reality were blurring and losing clarity, creating the impression that everything around had become unreliable and unstable. An impressive white tower, with blue accents, appeared before the children. Its majestic appearance was mesmerizing and attracted attention like a magical fortress from some fairy tale. The maiden looked at her former home with surprise lost in memories. She did not notice how Lisian grew up and became an adult again. With her head down, the girl tried to comprehend how it was possible to experience events simultaneously in her own mind and in the mind of the guy. Her thoughts rushed between reality and a strange paradox. The aristocrat was suddenly seized by a fit of coughing, which overtook him with such unexpected force that his chest tightened and his face was distorted by painful tension. The white gloves were stained with bright red spots, contrasting with their cleanliness and making them look as if they had been soiled by something important and unplanned. Grabbing the man's arm, Aston urged him to stop and wait. She wanted to take a break to sort out the situation and calm down a bit before continuing on their way, trying to collect her thoughts. Sparks of magic began to appear in the hand, flickering like precious lights, which softly glowed and sparkled like magic sparks, revealing an amazing and incredible power. With her arms outstretched, the little girl stood as if on the edge of an abyss, and without softening her expression, firmly declared that she would not go anywhere until Lisian told her every last detail. Dropping to one knee, the boy admitted that he was nothing more than a memory that had been lost in the shadow of time and left only an ephemeral trace in reality. The evil serpent was not just a monster, but a curse placed on the little girl, causing her to frequently lose her memory and recollections. This sinister spirit, like a shadow of the past, haunted her, and each of its appearances aggravated her suffering. The nobleman briefly explained that all he could tell was that he and the monster had fought long and hard, and that was the extent of his knowledge of what had happened. Standing next to the knight, Aston, full of curiosity, resolutely asked what prompted him to protect her so loyally and resolutely, and waited for his answer to understand the depth of his motivation. Embarrassed, but with genuine emotion, the man admitted that in reality, he had sworn to protect his beloved at any cost, despite all the difficulties and dangers that might arise before him. The unbreakable oath sworn in the old ritual required the knight to hold the sword for one man only, and he was bound to keep that oath and allegiance throughout his life. However, the little girl could not understand why Lisian chose her to protect, and this question tormented her thoughts, leaving many unsolved mysteries. In the mansion, the lady had to find lost memories, hidden deep inside her mind, hidden from sight and time. Memories like lost treasures were waiting for their time to become visible again. Placing his hand to his chin, the knight admitted that he did not know the real reason why he had chosen to protect the petite lady. Only the Lisian of reality could reveal that secret. Several steps have been taken, and only after Aston finds the lost memories will she be able to return back to where she came from. The ground began to crack and break under the young men's feet, as if warning them of impending danger. An abyss of the unknown opened up before them, threatening to swallow everything around them, and awakening a feeling of anxious anticipation. Reaching out her hand, the girl desperately screamed the name of the knight they had just spoken to, hoping that her scream would reach him and bring back the feeling of safety she was so looking for in this anxious moment. With a slight smile on his face, the guy said goodbye to the lady, promising that they would definitely meet again, and this moment would only be a temporary separation until the next meeting. Aston woke up on the cold floor, tears still running down her cheeks, a male figure towering over her, watching the aristocrat like a shadow. Before her stood the beautiful Lisian, his eyes full of tears quietly flowing down his cheeks as he leaned over his sleeping lover, silently sharing her pain and suffering. The man quietly, with barely noticeable sadness in his voice, asked how long she had carried this desire in her heart, to throw off the burden of the life of an aristocrat and go into the unknown world of the dead. Lying next to his lady on the cold surface of the portal's magical seal, the nobleman whispered pleadingly, asking her not to leave him, not to disappear forever into the mysterious abyss of another world. The boy suddenly lost consciousness from exhaustion. His body sank lifelessly to the ground. Aston looked at him with pain in her heart, and she felt sincerely sorry for this poor aristocrat who was ready to give everything for her. When the woman's hand touched the man's face, she felt that Lisian was completely hot and red, as if his skin was burning with an internal fire, betraying the passionate and stormy state he was in. Suddenly, the door swung open with a loud screeching sound, and Hyven appeared in the doorway, surrounded by an ominous dark aura, as if his presence filled the space with darkness and cold. Putting his hand to his forehead, the magician said with confusion and surprise that even in his wildest assumptions, he could not have imagined that the knight would be able to break through their protective magical field and penetrate the tower without much difficulty. Heading towards Aston, the wizard asked in bewilderment how exactly the nobleman managed to break into their carefully guarded building, overcoming all the protective magical barriers, and also for what reason. Raising her hands up, the lady said that she herself did not understand how it happened, but her spell did not work, and she lost consciousness. When she came to Lisian, was already here. After asking what spell the student was trying to cast, the mentor raised his hands and began to use magic, creating complex patterns in the air to figure out what had happened. Aston didn't know how to explain to her mentor the situation with the poison and magic, the properties of which began to manifest, and the lady turned pale from excitement, feeling panic creeping up on her face. The girl saw in the last moments how the teacher was rushing towards her, but then she lost consciousness. Her vision began to fade and blur. Crying, Lily quietly whispered how much they scared her. Her girlish voice trembled with fear and depression, each word reflecting the depth of her experiences and worries. Hyven, waving his hand, promised to teach the student a lesson. As soon as he woke up, the man's face was full of determination and sternness, reflecting complete seriousness of intentions and readiness for disciplinary training. A magnificent white chandelier hung elegantly from the ceiling, replete with many candles, which, like stars in the night sky, softly flickered, creating an atmosphere of refined and enchanting comfort. Aston woke up in her bed, lying on a soft pillow, barely opening her green eyes that had not yet gotten used to the light and gradually returning to reality after a short sleep. Jumping up in place, the lady realized with alarm that she did not know where she was. Her gaze darted around the unfamiliar surroundings, and she tried in a panic to remember what had brought her here. Another man entered the room, and seeing that their mistress had finally woken up, he could not hide the relief and joy that filled his heart, like rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. The lady with blonde hair politely looked at the young mistress sitting in bed and asked with care and tenderness about her health. It was the owner of the infirmary, known as Sorda. The woman, worried and anxious, suggested that the girl might try to commit suicide. Rolling up his sleeves, Aston the doctor carefully touched his finger to the skin, explaining that recently, the recruits often experimented with their bodies, but this was the first time such an experiment almost led to death. The beauty, feeling the stern and demanding gaze of the madam, embarrassedly, and with the deepest respect, apologized for her awkward laughter, which sounded inappropriate in such a serious situation. The doctor smiled and said that it was time for her to go. But there was one visitor who was persistent in his efforts to meet the patient, disregarding the established procedure. Covering her mouth with her hand, the woman added that despite her inner resistance, she could not disobey a member of the Imperial family. It was full of regret and inner struggle, reflecting the severity of the choice she had to make. Thus, the girl was left alone, sitting on the bed in complete silence, immersed in thought and waiting for the long-awaited rich guest to finally appear before her. Turning around, the maiden suddenly noticed a white, delicate, and fragile flower in the vase, which, with its lonely presence, added a special note of sophistication and coziness to this quiet corner. Turning around, the maiden suddenly noticed in the vase a solitary anemone plant with delicate petals white as snow, which seemed especially touching in their exquisite simplicity. The aristocrat stepped carefully over the threshold, and her steps, ringing on the cold tiles, filled the room with an echo, as if every movement was carefully recorded in the silence, creating an atmosphere of tense anticipation. Pink hair flowed softly around her, as a casual voice with a gentle undertone asked her old friend if she was awake, yet the tone full of concern and slight insistence, as if every word was wrapped in tenderness. It was Lily, who with deep attention and care asked Aston not to overexert herself and to remain calm, trying to create comfort in this difficult situation and support at any moment when she especially needed support. Sitting down next to her friend, she began to reproach the lady for drinking poison, as a result of which she was now suffering, and expressed her dissatisfaction with her thoughtless act. The princess quickly realized that Aston was simply eager to return to her home world, where she could find long-awaited peace away from all current worries. Their hands touched softly and intertwined, creating a feeling of tender connection and deep mutual support, as if their hearts began to exchange warmth that penetrated into the very soul and warmed every particle of their beings. Touching her forehead to her friend's palms, the aristocrat quietly said that Aston's behavior was extremely reckless, which led to such unpleasant consequences. The words were filled with deep sadness and regret. The princess could not hold back her tears when, immersed in dark thoughts, she realized that the girl could really die. A deep feeling of sadness and horror in the face of such a tragic outcome filled the maiden's heart. The early heir to the throne explained that she kept her distance to avoid unnecessary trouble, but no one could have predicted that the situation would turn out so tragically. The shocked aristocrat looked with horror and disbelief at her old friend, who was trembling with fear for her life and worried that she might lose Aston. While Lily was consumed with anger, the noblewoman admitted that she seemed to have found a way to return the lost memories that seemed to be irretrievably lost. With a smile and a blush on her cheeks, the lady added that she would definitely correct all the mistakes and try again, striving to do everything possible to achieve better results. Lily tearfully agreed, but begged the lady not to cause herself further injury in the process of correcting her mistakes, taking care of her own well-being. Touching her old acquaintance, the lady quietly asked if the princess was hiding something important, persistently trying to reveal the truth behind the apparent kindness and calm. The lady confidently stated that Aston knew her too well, but all the actions and intentions of the princess were aimed solely at ensuring the well-being and comfort of the noblewoman. In the future, Lily will have to pretend that she did not know her best friend, because while the aristocrat remained at court, her connection with the heir to the throne remained carefully hidden. As the maiden opened her mouth in a desperate attempt to speak her thoughts, The thorns piercing her throat blocked her speech, placing a curse on her that made it impossible for her to utter even the quietest sound. Lily found herself in a terrible situation, becoming a victim of thorns that not only pierced the woman's body, but also trapped the woman in a dense cage of wild thickets, depriving her of the opportunity to escape and condemning her to endless torment. Trying to hold back a groan of pain, the princess turned around in surprise when she heard that Aston could help her, and hope for salvation awoke in her large eyes. It turned out that the older brother was also aware of his sister's problem of being unable to speak, and this knowledge opened up new perspectives for solving the plight. Placing her hand on her chest, Aston felt hurt, realizing that her friend was unwilling to reveal her secrets and did not trust her enough to share important information. After he knocked on the door, Haven cautiously entered the room, politely asking for permission to enter. The male voice was full of respect and expectation of approval. The girls simultaneously turned their heads towards the unexpected noise coming from the opening door, their gazes frozen in anticipation of what would happen next. When Aston's girlfriend and his mentor started arguing, it seemed strange because, according to the predictions, the man was supposed to fall in love with Lily and not get into a conflict, which made the situation even more confusing. With his hands folded behind his back and a slight smile on his face, the wizard said in a calm but firm voice that the promised time had long since expired, and it was time to say goodbye. As a farewell, the princess tenderly and with warmth in her eyes kissed the tip of Aston's nose, leaving behind a barely perceptible scent, like a quiet promise that they would meet again. In the graceful female hand was placed a small note hidden between the slender fingers. It contained an important message that could change the course of events. Hyven sat down on the chair next to the bed, carefully forming a complex sign with his fingers, and activated the soundproofing surrounding them with an invisible barrier that hid the conversation from prying ears. With caution and attention in his voice, the teacher asked his protégé whether she had decided to go against the tower, having mastered powerful magic of the highest rank. Realizing all the risks and possible consequences of this step, in an attempt to change the subject and avoid discussing more serious matters, the lady awkwardly inquired about what was currently happening to the knight. The desire to avoid difficult topics and focus on less exciting aspects was obvious. Disappointed by the student's words, the man sighed quietly, closed his eyes and said with weariness in his voice that everything was fine with the aristocrat, although there was hidden irritation in his tone. Aston stood frozen in shock when she learned that the man had drunk some of the poison with his own mouth, not believing her own ears, and unable to comprehend the scale of what had happened. After this, Hyven hastened to reassure everyone, noting that Lady Sword had also examined the guards and made sure that he was feeling well, thereby dispelling any possible fears. The hands were intertwined, and it was obvious that Aston was looking for a way to get home, eager to find a solution, and hoping for a quick return to her normal life. Suddenly, the magician asked if the student had tried to return to another world, which shocked the lady, who certainly did not expect such a question. The thing was that there were a few errors in the magic seal, but not all the conditions for the transition to another dimension were met, which could significantly affect its success and safety. Jumping out of bed and grabbing her mentor by the shoulder, the girl asked with tense excitement and impatience in her voice how she could significantly improve the mana and improve the operation of the portal, seeking to receive valuable recommendations from him. Hyven sternly stated that for someone as inexperienced and unstable as she was, this would be an extremely difficult task and would require much more effort and preparation to successfully solve the problem. Nostalgia for a place that has been forgotten is a dangerous thing, like a flame that burns a book, leaving only the smoldering embers of memories and regrets. The teacher couldn't stop thinking about the danger that could befall Aston. His cold mind was filled with anxiety, and he couldn't take his eyes off the possible threats that lay in wait for her. Tears slowly and inexorably flowed onto the fabric, leaving wet marks that soaked into the fibers, as if absorbing the full depth of grief and inner fear. Unable to bear the pressure, Aston began to sob, tears streaming down her face, as the lady holding on to her last hopes only dreamed of returning back home, leaving all her suffering behind. To at least slightly encourage his charge, the man gently touched his finger to her forehead, trying to attract her attention and restore her sense of calm and confidence. Hyven asked the girl to trust him and allow herself to be helped, offering his support in a difficult time to ease the suffering and restore lost hopes. The sorcerer added that it would have been good if he had known about his ward's past from the beginning, as it could have helped him to understand better and provide more appropriate assistance. The palm, tightly grasping the sheet, squeezed it so hard, as if seeking comfort and warmth in this thin, almost transparent material, which became a symbol of hope and comfort at this moment. The aristocrat decided to finally reveal the truth, that she herself had ended up in the world of the book she had recently read. The little girl was ready to share her amazing experiences and unusual experiences. With a smile on his face, Hyven confirmed that he had no reason to doubt his student or the woman's words, completely trusting her sincerity and honesty. Clutching her head, Aston frankly admitted her fear that her true home was merely imaginary and not the real place she considered hers. Looking down to the side, the man said that highly developed magic was also in essence considered nothing more than a fiction. But what the lady said was true. A beaming smile of happiness appeared on the beauty's face when she realized how precious and joyful true friendship was, filling her heart with warmth and light. Approaching the girl, the mentor suggested discussing something else, distracting from the current topic, and creating a more relaxed atmosphere for conversation. In the wizard's hand was an exquisite flower of snow-white hue, its petals shimmering with a subtle shine, as if personifying the purity and magic inherent in the magician himself. The flower was tenderly placed into the hands of the noble woman, with the help of magic, which at the same time gave this moment a special sophistication and grandeur, emphasizing status and sophistication. The fingers, with a light and trembling movement, touched the petals, as if trying to feel their fine texture and the magical aura contained in each of them. Soon the plant darkened under the influence of the magic of time, and instead of an innocent white hue, it acquired a deep, mysterious color, reflecting the changes and hidden forces that altered its essence. Aston confirmed that she clearly noticed a distinct difference between the two manas, feeling every feature and distinction between them. The differences were so pronounced that they gave each its own unique nature and character. The room they were in was taken as an example, and the main question was whether the room would remain the same in a month or would undergo changes. The lady confirmed that the room would remain the same, and so the man decided to abandon the example and give a more complex one, since it was no longer relevant to the issue under discussion. The example chosen was a fountain that would be built 1,000 years in the future. It was expected that by then the two spaces, including the room, would be significantly different from each other. Holding a delicate flower in his hand, the magician explained with deep wisdom the difference between space and time, as well as their relationship to magical processes, revealing the secrets that connect these fundamental aspects of reality. Returning the plant back to the vase, the sorcerer summed up, "The maiden's failure did not consist in betraying the belief that she exists only in the present, but in another." Surprised, Aston switched to discussing Alexandra the Great, who was a real celebrity in this world. Until that moment, the lady had rarely heard of such an outstanding person, and curiosity was seized with a new interest. She was the person who started the Alexandrian era, known as the Golden Age of continental history. The emperor was known to have 4 sacred objects that symbolized his status as a monarch. In the original, the coat of arms was stolen by a villain, which caused a furious clash of swords and spilled blood, leading to tragic consequences. High treason that shook the entire country. Aston froze in place upon hearing that among the things of those times, there were also objects related to space and time, such as the hearts of stars and winds. Alexandra herself came from another world. However, the order was not to be changed. Standing before the student, Hyven reminded her of the importance of regaining her memories, emphasizing that this was a key aspect to maintaining stability and understanding of what was happening. At that moment, Aston remembered how in the past, the wizard felt traces of old magic on her body, after which the lady confessed that she had recently had a strange dream after the poison. The sorcerer had not had dreams for over 20 years, and so he was interested in finding out what exactly his ward had dreamed about. He wanted to understand what was hidden behind these dreams, and what significance they might have in the context of their current affairs. The former noblewoman, wrapped in memories of a dream where she and Lisian were running headlong from an ominous serpent, sees how the boy strives to help her find the way home, which she dreams of, with longing in her heart. What troubled the lady most was the snake magic, a curse that made her lose her memories, as if in a nightmare, and every day she sank deeper and deeper into the fog of forgotten moments. But someone mentioned earlier that Aston was given a knight's protection in the form of a coat of arms and thorns, which was supposed to protect the owner from all hidden threats and evil spells. It turned out that this was a resonance effect of protection. This phenomenon occurred when two elements connected by two ribbons shared their unconscious, creating an unusual interaction. Hyven added that there was a known practice when a protector possessing strength and wisdom came to his ward in a dream to help and protect him from evil. With a snap of his fingers, a figure in armor appeared, and it became clear that the spell cast on the lady had been in effect for 10 years, thanks to the sacrifice made in the form of a pet. As the fingers intertwined, and the very request was spoken, to represent the earth spell, every sound and every word seemed to be wrapped in ritual magic. A snake appeared behind the girl, glowing with a scarlet light, emitting an ominous aura. Preparing to attack, it wrapped its cunning traps around her, ready to strike at any moment. The guard, determined to confront the evil monster with fearsome fangs, stood up to defend himself, relying on his courage and skills to stop this monster. The wizard explained with a simple example that the echoes of a spell that was supposed to alter the memory collided with the knight's defense, causing the memories to become mixed up and confused. Standing up from his seat and looking at the difficult situation, the man thoughtfully said that even for him who had considerable knowledge and experience in magic, removing this spell would be an extremely difficult task that would require incredible effort. This deeply saddened Aston, and hanging her head in utter despair, she felt the weight of a new problem fall upon her shoulders, as if every breath became heavier under an unbearable burden. Hyven suggested taking decisive action and injuring the person who cast the curse so severely that the person could no longer maintain the spell. The wizard stopped when he heard the words of gratitude directed towards him, and his face lit up with a sincere light of appreciation, reflecting a deep-touched emotion. Smiling modestly, the magician, with a slight irony in his voice, noted that he was not used to receiving gratitude from the young lady, and did not consider it his goal to gain recognition for his efforts and help. The lady was deeply interested in the reasons why the mentor showed such a sincere willingness to help her, and sought to understand what lay behind the selfless support and such an obvious desire to help. The teacher, unable to understand the mood of the student, decided to openly admit that he felt the light of the soul emanating from her, which prompted him to provide assistance. Sitting in her luxurious chair, the aristocrat learned that Hyven had previously had a student whom unfortunately he was unable to save. He still carries a heavy sense of guilt for the girl's fate, and this inescapable pain continues to torment him. It turned out that the old student no longer practiced magic, despite the great hopes and expectations that had been placed on her in the past, and the bright prospects that had been prophesied for her. Turning his back on his new charge, the man sternly reminded her that feelings are the most powerful motivator for every person, and they are what encourage one to strive for the best. Sitting on the soft sheets, the lady was immersed in thoughts about how the originally planned story took an unexpected turn, and how circumstances turned out completely differently than the beauty had foreseen. The Amoran clan had ruled the Tower of Magic for nearly 200 years, and Hyven, who inherited the blood of his wizard ancestors, continued to uphold this ancient tradition. Magic was the only way to perform miracles, allowing one to control waters and create amazing magical phenomena with the help of a staff. Moreover, the lady decided to go to Roger's castle to try to regain some of her lost memories that could shed light on her past and restore lost connections. The girl, looking out the window with sad thoughts, decided to immediately go to the palace, hoping to restore her lost memories and return to her usual way of life as soon as possible in order to find peace again. The reader's hand tightened as he learned that Aston had previously been in critical condition, adding extra tension and excitement to the report. The man reported to the master that the Seymour family's entry into the Mage's Tower had been denied due to the wishes of a young lady who had opposed their presence and influenced the decision. Recovered so quickly in 2 days after the poisoning, a memory of his beloved lying in his arms, covered in blood, came into his head, and the painful state left a deep and lasting mark on his consciousness, permeating all thoughts and feelings. The nobleman clutched his head, immersed in deep confusion and inner torment, unable to understand whether this terrible ordeal was a punishment for his decision to reject the cursed child. The eldest son shook his head and said that his father would never have been allowed in personally, and that he should have abandoned his unloved daughter, even though she was not yet dead. With a malicious grin, the man stated that his beloved had died in childbirth, leaving him with only Aston, and because of this, they had to take a humiliating oath of allegiance to the Imperial family. In the office, the boy turned to his father, fully aware that the aristocrat blamed his youngest daughter for the death of his beloved, and this knowledge gave his words a special weight. Loudly slamming his hands on the table, the guy continued his story, noting that the woman died in the presence of the life mage. This circumstance seemed incredibly strange and inexplicable, leaving many questions unanswered. At these words, the father shook his head and, sighing, said that he would like to let go of the memories of his beloved and forget about the past in order to free himself from heavy emotions and regrets. The boy couldn't understand the reason for his parents' behavior, wondering if it was because Aston had received a title that changed her status, or because the baby had almost died from poison. The son was interested in how his father's attitude towards him and Adrian had changed, especially considering that he had shown no signs of change in his strict behavior. The Alexandra Castle, amazed with its grandiose dimensions and exquisite splendor, representing a majestic structure that seemed to materialize from ancient myths and legends, captivating everyone with its grandeur. In a spacious office, surrounded by attentive subjects, sat a man at a large table, immersed in serious discussions and important issues that required his full attention and concentration. The elder brother, with a slight ironic smile on his face, discovered that his sister princess's husband intended to dissolve their marriage, which was unexpected and unpleasant news for him. Lisian confirmed his previously stated words, confirming their truth and immutability, which allowed him to strengthen his position and emphasize the seriousness of his intentions. The heir, listening to the words and actions, noted that it was not for nothing that the knight was called the Spear of the Empire, since his actions and steadfastness confirmed this well-deserved reputation. Placing his hand on the shoulder of another nobleman, Cassius said that in that case he would have to pay a considerable sum, indicating the need for fair compensation. Turning away and frowning slightly, the man asked Lisian if he knew why this room they were currently in was called the Sunset Room, as if the name hid a special story. It turned out that the room was located on the western side, which symbolized the need for humility, since it meant that the sun would sooner or later set below the horizon. Approaching the glass, the future ruler said that where the sun set, something new was born, which sounded poetic and symbolized the beginning of a new stage full of possibilities and changes. Lisian, standing behind, affectionately called the heir to the throne, the ideal son, emphasizing his exceptional importance and the brightness that he brings to the future reign, like a bright and motionless radiance. Smiling slyly, the man asked the princess to give him the symbol of the monarch of the opposition faction. He promised that in exchange for this, he would break off the engagement, which made the offer especially weighty and difficult. The nobleman accepted the emperor's conditions and was ready to do everything possible to find a symbol that embodied power and could satisfy the demands of such a difficult task. The river meandered through the dense forest, its waters shimmering in the sun, reflecting the green hues of the foliage. Tall trees created warm shade, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves, filling the air with a soft rustle. The aristocrat walked slowly along the path of the backyard, deciding to listen a little to the conversation of his acquaintances and enjoy the walk in the fresh air, allowing himself to relax and take a break from the hustle and bustle. The princess was already waiting for him there, in one of her most luxurious dresses, but her face showed clear displeasure at meeting her own fiancé, as if the dress could not hide her inner disappointment. Now they walked along the path together, enjoying the tranquility of nature and talking, trying to forget about their recent disagreements. It came as a complete surprise to the beautiful Lily to learn that Lisian had come here with the intention of breaking off his engagement to her, despite the fact that he had long been engaged to her friend Aston, which added to the drama. Having politely inquired about the size of the princess's dowry, the man was astonished to hear that his own means were clearly inferior to the considerable fortune that belonged to her. The beauty confessed, hugging herself by the shoulders, that the desire to protect Aston was stronger than the desire to protect her brother. The revelation was full of depth and sincerity. Lisian decided to trust his companion, despite the doubts that still remained in his soul, and continued to walk forward along the road, striving for the unknown. In the world, one could not trust anyone but oneself. Lily froze in shock as the man uttered a comparison that had often been used in her childhood, and the unexpected reminder made her fragile heart beat faster. With a sweet smile, the beauty drew a subtle line of comparison between them and Connie Laura, mentioning their common features and characteristics, which immediately became obvious and understandable. By making a move with the Black Knight, the maiden admitted that it would be much easier to save Lore if she made a move with the knight herself, thus emphasizing the strategic importance of this move. The maiden's eyes widened in surprise when she heard that there was only one cage in front of the count, and this simple fact caused her no small surprise. The princess was in complete shock when she learned that this knowledge belonged only to her and Aston, and no one else, which led the little girl into a state of deep confusion. The prince coughed and hinted that he had spent a lot of time with the aristocrat in the last few days, discussing important matters and organizing social events. The noblewoman asked Lisian to be especially attentive and kind to the sweet Aston, showing her all his attention and care so that she felt loved and protected. The man replied that this had long been part of his duties, and he always tried to show due attention and care to provide the lady with all the necessary conditions for comfort and safety. Standing in her home, Aston was truly grateful that she was finally able to completely rid herself of the effects of the poison she had taken, and could now feel relief and recovery. The girl began to carefully unfold the note, with her fingers full of curiosity and excitement, trying to find out what was written inside and what she could learn from this letter. Reading the text with her eyes, the maiden learned that the 25th day of the primrose month prescribed moving 12 cells forward from the griffin and 3 cells behind the white knight. Covering her face with her hand, the lady quickly realized that the note contained important information, directions to the meeting place, and the exact time appointed by the princess. Soon, another letter appeared on the floor, enclosed in a purple envelope with a red seal which immediately attracted attention with its unusual design and mysterious contents. Aston was surprised when she unfolded the paper, as she had no official dealings with the Imperial family up until that point, and the former noblewoman did not expect to receive such a letter. Summer had arrived, and the season had arrived, when all the candidates for the title of Crown Princess, along with their parents, were invited to the Emperor's magnificent palace to appear before high society and demonstrate their virtues. In addition, a special observer was appointed at the ball among the girls, whose task was to monitor what was happening and carefully integrate into the society of ladies in order to maintain order and ensure compliance with all norms. If the observer manages to successfully complete the ball without revealing his true role, the Imperial family will grant him the right to make any wish and will bestow upon him an honorary title in recognition of his loyalty and skill. The paper stated that Aston was the designated observer this year and was to report to the secret team for further discussion and preparation for the upcoming event. It is unlikely that anyone would have chosen her for such a position, and it seems that a third party intervened in what was happening, slipping a piece of paper into the hands of the young lady and thereby changing her fate. The girl paused at the door, slowly and carefully, considering her answer. She needed to give a balanced and reasoned word before talking to the man who had invited Aston to this place. The door made a quiet, drawn-out creak as it began to slowly open, clearing the space and adding a sense of mystery to the whole scene. Entering inside, the sorceress saw Lily's older brother, who was sitting leisurely on a chair with an expression of calm complacency on his face, giving everything that was happening a special atmosphere. Before the conversation began, the man with special attention and delicacy inquired about the condition of his interlocutor, who had recently recovered from an illness, showing sincere concern. Touching her hand to her chest, Aston confidently said that she felt fine, and there was no need to worry, trying to calm her interlocutor with her calm and encouraging tone. Sitting down on the sofa opposite the prince, the sorceress explained that her illness was caused by intense work and research, which required a lot of effort and time from her. The maiden frankly did not understand why the heir to the throne had called Seymour here, considering that the lady had a very dubious reputation and bad fame surrounding her gentle name. Cassius folded his hands in front of him and declared that, on the contrary, he could profit from his notoriety, since no one at court would guess that Aston would be the secret observer hiding behind his reputation. Taking the cup in hand, the question was asked whether the aristocrat would like to participate in the joyful celebration that was planned for the near future. The girl did not like being addressed as a princess, and so she hastened to object, trying to hide her secret and showing dissatisfaction with the inappropriate title. Putting the cup of tea down on the table, with a slight sigh of relief, the noblewoman asked if it was possible to make a wish after completing the work of a secret observer. Having handed over the paper, and without thinking for long, the prince stated that such an opportunity could be arranged, expressing his willingness to help in the realization of the desired. Aston sought to obtain the monarch's symbol and unravel an ancient desire to open access to the imperial family's treasury, or find the key to powerful magic that could open new horizons of power and knowledge. The lady who accepted the conditions of the heir to the throne also sought to defend her own interests and rights in order to preserve her privileges and influence. The gazebo was filled with bright sunlight and the scent of fresh flowers, creating an atmosphere of coziness and harmony in which every moment seemed magical. Looking around in her thoughts, the noblewoman vainly sought that special place that could correspond to her inner world and bring long-awaited peace. Not far from it, there was a picturesque corner where many plants were fragrant, attracting graceful butterflies, fluttering between the flowers, and creating an atmosphere of enchanting nature. Trying to push aside the thick bushes, Aston unexpectedly came across a hidden passage, veiled by green vegetation, and promising to open up new and mysterious horizons before her. There, inside Lily, was already waiting for her, dressed in a snow-white dress, like a dazzling vision that contrasted with the dark depths of the passage, creating the impression of a mysterious, almost mystical meeting. The princess, radiating joy and happiness, rushed to embrace her old friend. The woman's face glowed with sincere delight, like a bright star illuminating the night sky. They spread a blanket on the grass and sat on it, combing through their hair, like two artists creating elegant hairstyles together that reflected their closeness and long-awaited reunion. While Lily was doing her hair, Aston, unable to resist her curiosity, decided to find out how the heir to the throne managed to convince her to become a secret observer. The beauty honestly admitted that her older brother was initially categorically against this idea, but she managed to convince her relative that she was right and get his consent. The princess considered this a great opportunity for her friend. She tired of long conversations and worries lay down on the blanket to rest and enjoy the moment. Lily sat down carefully next to him, turned her head to Aston, and with a warm smile on her face, said that now she had to accept a letter of recommendation that would make life much easier and simpler. The girl's eyes widened in surprise when she learned that the Duke had finally decided to end his wild life and leave behind all his previous follies. There were rumors that a wealthy nobleman was planning to destroy all the delicate red roses that adorned the Seymour family crest, intending to deprive it of such a significant symbol. According to the plot, Lily and the Duke agreed to join forces to deal with the hated Aston together in order to get rid of the terrible lady and eliminate all the problems that arise. The noblewoman had managed to forget about the hidden threat and, lying on her back, asked her friend why she had chosen her for such an important role when she could have trusted someone else. The princess said that if all conditions were met, Aston would receive guaranteed immunity from the Empire, which would ensure complete protection and security, as well as eliminate any possible threats. There were rumors that there were mages in the tower who had turned evil. Therefore, it would be much safer if the lady remained under surveillance in the palace to avoid any possible dangers. The sorceress had no choice but to gratefully accept the invitation, expressing her gratitude to her friend for the warm gesture and support which allowed them to strengthen their friendly bonds. In the first month of the harvest, dressed in an exquisite dress, the noblewoman got into a decorated carriage and went to the palace to take part in the luxurious ball that awaited her there. The girl felt uneasy about forcing her mentor to go with her, but he just brushed it off, assuring her that it was a minor matter and not worth worrying about. Aston herself constantly thought about the imminent meeting with the knight who once swore to protect her until the end of his days, and this upcoming event did not give her peace. When asked what he would like to receive as a gift, the sorcerer replied that he dreams of getting a rare and expensive magical artifact in order to study the secrets of subspace and reveal its secrets. This answer did not clarify anything for the aristocrat, because the mentor was a magician and the knight was a warrior, and their goals and desires were always so different that sometimes they seemed mysterious and incomprehensible to her. When the teacher realized that his ward had planned to give a gift to a man, Aston, embarrassed and not knowing how to justify herself, raised her hands in recognition and blushed all over like a berry. One of the successful gift options, in her opinion, could be a pair of high-quality and elegant shoes, which would undoubtedly be to her taste. Suddenly, the aristocrat remembered that the name Lisian reminded her of flowers, and this thought suddenly seemed like a wonderful idea for the perfect gift that could express her feelings. The lady's thoughts were interrupted by the loud voice of the mentor, who excitedly announced their arrival, causing her to focus on the present moment again. A huge number of carts and horses are lined up in the square near the fountain, creating a picturesque and crowded landscape, which is filled with bustle and vigorous movement, as if life itself has filled this corner of the city with energy and dynamism. Hiven gave his hand to his charge so that she could climb onto the podium, and thanks to his help, she felt confident and could move freely. The people around began to whisper and whisper to each other, discussing with anxiety and fear that the sinister villainess from the mysterious tower had arrived in the square, and their gazes were full of alertness and curiosity. The constant whispering and gossiping made Aston feel uneasy and awkward. The surrounding atmosphere was filled with tension and hostility. As a gift, a man's hand carefully handed over a delicate and refined object to a woman's, emphasizing the attention to detail and the special significance of the moment. It was Haven who cared about his student and was not willing to allow anyone to hurt her, showing protection and consideration for her well-being. The girl sighed heavily, feeling herself under the reliable protection of her friend, and her anxiety subsided a little when she realized that she was not alone in this tense moment. The two of them confidently walked forward, overcoming all obstacles and ignoring the anxious glances of those around them. Their steps were full of determination and resolution, as if they could cope with any difficulty. The symbols of the monarchy were 4 relics each, of which represented important aspects of royal power and tradition, giving special significance and respect to the historical legacy of the ruling dynasty. Of all the relics, Aston knew the location of only the star heart and wind that the mentor had mentioned earlier, and this knowledge was the only guide in this complex and mysterious world. Knowing from Jadis how tough the summer season can be, the man offered his help to his ward, trying to ease the burden and support her during difficult times. The sorcerer modestly admitted that he had personally known the Empress doing so, with a hint of humility, as if he did not want his connections with high circles to overshadow his true intentions. The lady refused the teacher's help, stating that she had already received enough recognition for improving the Mage Tower and could cope quite well without servants, confident in her own strength and determination. Having made sure that his charge was completely fine and everything was under control, Hyven decided that the time had come when he could calmly leave the baby and go about his business without worrying about her safety. The maid, with courtesy and care, escorted the young mistress to her new quarters, ensuring a comfortable and pleasant journey so that she could settle in and feel at ease in her new surroundings. In the palace, the women were placed in the chambers next to the Empress, while the men were placed on the left, in the same rooms where the Emperor lived, which ensured a harmonious distribution among the different parts of the palace. Aston was given a room on the 2nd floor, located on the Empress's side, which allowed her to be closer to the center of important palace life and provided easy access to key parts of the building. Inside the room was a balcony overlooking the picturesque surroundings and many doors decorated with exquisite butterfly designs, giving the interior a light and sophisticated feel. Suddenly, the lady's solitude was disturbed by the appearance of another person, who, interrupting her peace, attracted attention and made a change in her peaceful stay. It was Renata, the Marquis's daughter, dressed in the elegant attire of a neutral faction. The lady had been placed in the next room so that she could be nearby without disturbing the general order and comfort. The fingers of her hands were intertwined in a gesture of confusion, revealing inner anxiety and uncertainty. It was obvious how the maiden was trying to hide her emotions. The lady was genuinely pleased that she was treated with respect and reverence as a magician, which gave her confidence and a sense of importance in this new environment. In the privacy of her cloak, Aston quietly but decisively voiced one important condition that turned out to be key to her continued stay in the palace, determining her entire fate and future in this place. The Crown Prince was willing to listen to the young lady's whims, showing patience and attention to her demands in order to satisfy her wishes and ensure a comfortable stay. Aston humbly asked to be treated as a future candidate for the role of Lord of the Tower during her stay at the palace, rather than as a lady of the Seymour family, so that she could focus on her duties. Without much thought, Lily's older brother agreed to the proposal, and they made a deal defining the terms of cooperation and mutual obligations, which allowed them to move forward effectively. Renata had heard a lot about the young lady from a mutual friend, but she wanted to meet her in person to better understand her and form her own opinion. With a smile, Aston said that she was glad to meet during the joyful summer and expressed her gratitude for the responsiveness of her interlocutor, emphasizing how pleasant it was for her to communicate and find a common language. This time, the aristocrat presented herself differently as a future candidate for the role of ruler of the tower, emphasizing her ambitions and goals that she set for herself in this new status. Renata, taken aback by the unexpected turn of events, opened her mouth wide, not believing what she had just heard, and her face reflected deep shock at the sudden statement of the noblewoman. Renata happily congratulated the lady across from her on her amazing gifts and outstanding magical abilities, expressing sincere admiration and support that gave her confidence. In the original, the lady with red hair sitting opposite was an honest person, not prone to ambiguity, which gave the words sincerity and directness. Seymour politely asked about the neutral party's rules, which she knew nothing about, showing interest and a desire to better understand them in order to interact more effectively in this context. The lady quietly muttered that since the lady had gotten rid of the shackles of roses, there was no longer any point in inviting Aston to the banquet, thereby expressing new emotions on her face. Glowing with happiness, the purple-eyed beauty invited her new friend to go together. Her offer was sincere and full of joy, which made the meeting even more pleasant. Having accepted the warm invitation, the two girls walked, with anticipation and trepidation, towards the large and majestic door, behind which a significant meeting, filled with important events, awaited them. The doors swung open with a dull, loud creak, and the girls approached them with excitement and anticipation, and entered ready to meet other noble ladies from wealthy families. They were deeply surprised by the unexpected arrival of Lady Seymour, about whom the most disappointing rumors were circulating. For such a presence gave the situation a special intrigue and tension. With politeness and grace, Renata introduced herself as the Marquise's daughter, while Aston, with genuine grace, introduced herself as the sorceress from the mysterious tower. Rumors of Lady Seymour's presence immediately began to circulate quickly, shrouding her in an air of mystery and fueling the fire of numerous intrigues, adding mystery and tension to her every move. Suddenly, one hand pushed the other, gloved one aside sharply, and the lady was admonished to watch her tongue and avoid undesirable words. Anais Jutia approached smiling sweetly and adjusted her short lilac hair, which fell easily on her shoulders. In her exquisite dress, she looked incredibly beautiful and graceful.